many times a day do you get bombarded by the whole Bill Burr thing?
When it gets into the family and people I haven't talked to for 20 years.
Then you have to break character and tell the truth?
No, the thing is, this is what's crazy. Okay. You want the whole setup story?
Sure.
I can be quick
Sure.
So where I take my podcast is in one of Howie Mandel's buildings, and he has another building in this area. So I was working on something, and I was supposed to go on Howie's show that day. And they said, Howie will meet you out in the street or something for whatever reason. So I go out in the street, and the first thing Howie says to me when he sees me, he goes, "Here comes Bill Burr." And I go, "You too? Like, do you know this story?" And he said, "No, I don't know about it." And I said, "You know what? Heck with it. I'm just going to tell it on your show, so don't ask me anymore." And I went on the show, and I told the story about how 10 years ago my stepmother came to me and said, "Do you know who Bill Burr is?" I never heard of Bill, didn't know who he was, because I don't really consume much popular culture. I had no idea he was a famous comedian. He could have been the lawnmower guy. Looked up Bill. First thing I saw was like, oh my God, he looks just like Daddy. When I was 18 years old at an IHOP on my 18th birthday, my father told me, "You have a half-brother that I sired at the same time as you, whose name is Bill." So suddenly these facts come together, and my mother telling me these stories. I talked to my dad subsequently about it, and he was very cagey about it. And when I said, "Why won't you tell me where this person is or who this person is?" he said, I'm trying to protect you. So when my stepmother had told me, it kind of made sense, like, well, if my half-brother is this super famous comedian, my dad, in a way, wouldn't want me to know, because he wouldn't want me to feel like I was number two because Bill's so famous. I know it sounds crazy, right?
You think that's why he's trying to protect you?
Well, I don't know. So fast forward to Howie saying something on the street. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say something. And I swear to God, hand on my heart, last time I was with you in California, I almost pulled you aside after we were on, and I was going to tell you the story because I knew you knew Bill, and I was going to back channel, see if there was anything to the story from Bill's side.
Wow.
So imagine 6 or 7 years since we talked on your show.
Yeah, I don't even know.
2018, somebody said to me today. But so anyway, started talking over. But the point is, so here I am, fast forward, I'm just sick of seeing memes of my face with Bill's, and so I just decide on the spur of the moment, So Howie, of course, loves it. But I said on Howie's show that first time, I don't think Bill's my half-brother. I don't think there's anything there other than an uncanny resemblance. Fast forward, the thing comes out, it gets a little bit of social media, and then it goes away. And I think, good. And Bill didn't say anything, so I figured Bill was kind of like, whatever. It was a mild amusement. He could have made a joke out of the whole thing, and he didn't. So then Howie calls me, and I'm in LA working recently, and Howie's like, "We've come on the show, Bill's going to be on." And I said, "Is Bill cool with it?" "Oh yeah, no problem." So then I go there, and it's like, it turns into this thing that you see happening on camera. It's like, it's weirdness times, it's like a skit, but it's real. And Bill's on me, then Bill's on Howie, and it gets just, okay. So I just told you basically everything I know, okay? I have people I've known for 20, 30 years coming up to me going, "What do you think?" And I said, I don't think we're related. I mean, yeah, there's a resemblance, but I don't think we're related. "Well, did you get a DNA test?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. There's nothing to get a DNA test for." "Well, I think he's your brother." So people that know me, and I'm telling them I don't think he's my brother, now they want a DNA test to prove it. That's how much it's taken on a life of its own.
Do you think it's just because they want a DNA test because it's fun if he's your brother?
No. They're convinced.
For real?
Yes.
Really?
For real. I swear to God. I mean, people I'm close to, people that were at my wedding, I'm like, they're like, "No, you need a DNA test."
Did Bill's dad know, did your dad know Bill's mom?
No, my father wouldn't talk to me about it at all. Okay, some more context.
Okay.
My stepmother in that same time, 10 years ago, when she told me that she thought Bill Burr was my half-brother,
Jesus.
This guy I don't know, right? I mean, just imagine if like, hey, do you know Joe Polanski?
Right.
And you look up and it's a famous comedian. That's, that was...
Right.
So in that same thing with my stepmother, she told me that she thought my father had sired 12 children.
Whoa.
All over the place. All over the place. He was a traveling musician and a whore to his own admittance. So it kind of makes sense. He once told me he'd slept with 1,000 women. So
Jesus.
12 out of 1,000, you know what I mean? It's the
normal odds.
The math. Actually
pretty good.
Yeah. And so when I went to my father and I told him what my stepmother had said, he got really cagey and wouldn't tell me anything. He promised me that he would write down the names of the illegitimate children on a piece of paper so I could find them after he died.
Oh my God.
And he's died, and there's no paper.
Oh my God.
So now I got people wanting DNA tests because they're convinced that Bill is my half-brother.
Is Bill willing to do a DNA test?
I think that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
No, you have to do it.
no, that's what I'm saying. I mean, first of all, to Bill's credit, he's been, everything you saw on camera was I think his general irritation on the thing, but he also kind of finds it funny because he's a comedian.
I thought it was a skit. I thought you guys put together a skit. I really did. I thought because I thought, Bill does a lot of acting. I thought you guys were just fucking around. You like pro wrestling. I thought you guys just decided to troll the world.
Let me put it to you this way. Have you ever seen it, and I'm assuming, but you tell me if I'm wrong. Two guys get in a ring to roll around a bit, right?
Okay.
They're bros, they're gonna roll around a bit.
Uh-huh.
Emotions kick in, and next thing you know, somebody's tapping somebody out.
Let's take it past the point where you have these scales, you have a reusable ship,
Yeah.
you've got it dialed in. Then what are the steps? What's next step after that? Is it an unmanned voyage to Mars first?
Unmanned flight to Mars. The Earth and Mars orbit synchronize every 2 years, or every 26 months, technically. So the next orbital synchronization is November of next year. So, and you can launch plus minus a month, roughly. So we'd have to launch in November or December of next year. So the default plan is to launch hopefully several starships to Mars at the end of next year.
And what would they be doing?
Well, at first we're just going to try to land on Mars and see if we succeed in landing. Do we succeed in landing? Like, let's say we were able to send 5 ships. Do all 5 land intact, or do we add some craters to Mars? If we add some craters, we've got to be a bit more cautious about sending people. And we need to. So we're going to make sure the thing lands safely.
How does it land on Mars?
On rocket thrusters.
So it'll just land.
Oh, we'll add legs.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll add
It'll just
legs.
land and
Yeah.
have legs and.
Yeah.
So it'll be remote controlled from Earth, or
No,
it'll
it's just autonomous.
autonomous completely.
Mars is, you can't remote control things from Earth because Mars
too far.
It's too far. Speed of light. You have speed of light constraints. So Mars at closest approach is roughly 4 light minutes, and when it's on the other side of the sun, it's about 12 light minutes. So round trip would be like 40 minutes, best case, if Mars is on the other side of the sun.
So once you do that, then how long do you think before you start sending people up there?
Well, we're going to try to go as fast as possible. You can think of this as really a race against time. Can we make Mars self-sufficient before civilization has some sort of future fork in the road where there's either like a war, nuclear war or something, or we get hit by a meteor, or simply civilization might just die with a whimper in adult diapers instead of with a bang. I think we can do this in, well, I don't know, at least, I think we could do it within 15 Earth-Mars synchronization events, or, so basically like 30-ish years. If we have an exponential increase if every year, if every 2 years we have like a major increase in the number of people and tonnage to Mars. Like, I think as a rough approximation, we need about 1 million tons to the surface of Mars, maybe 1 million people, that kind of thing.
To actually have a civilization.
Yeah,
And would you terraform? Like, what would you do?
You would eventually terraform Mars. At first, people would live in some kind of protected environment, like domes and underground and kind of thing. terraforming would take too long. And we're at this point in time where, for the first time in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth, it is possible to extend consciousness beyond our home planet. And that window may be open for a long time, or it may be open for a short time. I hope it's open for a long time, but it might only be open for a short time. And we should just make sure that we extend the light of consciousness to Mars before civilization either extinguishes or subsides. You know, what needs to happen is that the technology level of Mars drops below, or technology level of Earth drops below what is necessary to send spaceships to Mars. So, if there's some really destructive war, or like I said, some natural cataclysm, or simply the birth rate is so low that, you know, we just, like I said, die in adult diapers with a whimper. That's one of the possible outcomes. For a lot of countries are headed that way, by the way. So
Japan is, right?
Japan,
Korea.
Yeah. I mean, at
Dangerously.
at current birth rates, in 3 generations, Korea will be about 4% of its current size.
That's insane.
Yeah, maybe even less than that. They're only at 1/3 replacement rate. So if you have 3 generations, that's your 1/27th of your current population, which is 3%ish.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Basically, population collapse happens fast. So it seems to be accelerating in most parts of the world. So basically, I mean, from my standpoint, I'm like, this is the first time it's been possible to extend consciousness beyond Earth. Maybe that window will be open for a long time, but it might only be open for a short time. We should make sure that we make life multiplanetary and make consciousness multiplanetary while it's possible.
Well,
that's the goal of SpaceX.
It's certainly a smart goal if you take into consideration how vulnerable this planet really is. I mean, there's always some new story about something that might come and hit us 30 years from now. It's a 3% chance, and we really can't stop that right now, right? I mean, we don't really have the technology currently to even know how many rocks are coming our way, right? There's stuff that comes behind the sun that we can't see until it's pretty close, and it's headed our way.
Yeah.
Now, what is the fear of it's a long journey to Mars. You're sending people, it's a 6 month, how many months will it take?
6 months, 6 months roughly. It's a lot more than insider trading.
The way they're acquiring wealth.
Correct.
And what other methods?
I mean, this is really going to get me assassinated. It's like, I'm not lengthening my lifespan by explaining this stuff, to say the least. I mean, I was supposed to go back to DC. How am I going to survive? This is going to kill me for sure. In fact, I do think like it's like, I actually have to be careful that I don't push too hard on the corruption stuff, because it's going to get me killed. Yeah, it's like I was actually thinking about that on the plane flight over here. It's like, if I push too hard on the corruption stuff, people get desperate. Is the issue?
Right.
Then they say like, okay, if the money flow cuts off, then okay, they can't afford school for their kids.
Right.
Then they're gonna like, well, fuck you, I'm gonna kill you for my kids,
Right.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, geez.
Well, without getting you killed.
Yeah, exactly.
Get
So
out
I
of
mean,
here.
like, basically, I'm like, listen,
I get it.
We'll attack the corruption enough to keep civilization trucking along,
Yeah.
But I think if I fully destroy the corruption and the graft, they will kill me.
That's a fucked up thing to live with.
Yes. So I'm like, damn it.
Well, listen, I really hope they don't kill you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I strive to be alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a real concern. You know, I mean, there were two guys that before I supported Trump and everything. There were two guys that traveled to Austin to kill me. I don't know if you know about this.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and two separate incidents. One guy thought I put a chip in his head, and I mean they're both basically two guys that were just very much had severe mental illness. It wasn't like they had like I disagree with him politically and that's why he needs to die. This was before I was before I got sort of smeared as being, you know, some sort of like Nazi or something like that. Before the propaganda wave, the severe propaganda wave, the probability that any given homicidal maniac is going to try to kill you is proportionate to how many times they hear your name. And so they heard my name a lot, so I just got to the top of the list of two homicidal maniacs who were arrested, and both were in Travis County Jail at the same time.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't know if they talked or whatever, but they've both been released, by the way.
Jesus
They're both
Christ.
released on bail, yeah. Right, but they got ankle monitors and stuff, but still.
They can cut those off.
Yeah, I don't know, you know, exactly. So,
That's crazy.
yeah, and the second guy had like chief serial killer in his bio on his X profile. Yeah, it's like wasn't subtle, that's what I'm saying.
Jesus Christ.
What they're doing is evil.
They're also doing the same thing where they're completely distorting who you are, and people are going along with it. And just like we're talking about Trump derangement syndrome, people have Elon derangement syndrome. I see it.
Yeah.
I see where people can't see the forest for the trees.
Right, and it's like I'm the same person that I was a year ago. Nothing's changed, really. Like I didn't suddenly become a completely different human.
Right.
But if you read the sort of legacy mainstream media, their propaganda stream is that I am a completely different human.
Right.
But I didn't get like a brain transplant, you know, in a year. So, and if you say like 2 years ago, I was like a hero of the left.
Yeah.
So how can I go from hero to villain at age 53 suddenly?
MSNBC, CNN.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, hopefully people realize I'm not a Nazi.
I think they,
I just want to be clear.
They
I am not a Nazi.
I think we covered it.
But that's exactly what a Nazi would say. Damn it.
Yeah, that's what an alien would say.
Yeah, you can't escape this bullshit.
No, you can't escape it.
So
I don't think any reasonable person believes it. If they believe it, it's because they want to believe it.
No,
It's not because it's logical.
I mean, what's relevant about Nazis is like, are you like invading Poland? Okay.
Right.
And if you're not,
Right.
if you're not like invading Poland, maybe you're not.
Yeah,
Like
agreed.
you have to be like committing genocide and like starting wars. And
Right.
if you're not, like, what is actually what is bad about Nazis? It's not wasn't their fashion sense or their mannerisms.
It was the Holocaust.
It was
Yeah.
the war and
war,
genocide
yeah.
is what is the bad part.
Yeah.
Not their mannerisms and their dress code.
Well, that was the problem with all that punch a Nazi, like punch a Nazi. Remember that? People were saying, that was like a thing that people kept saying, punch a Nazi. Punch Nazis. But here's
Yeah.
where are you meeting Nazis? I've never met a Nazi.
I've never met one.
I've never run into a bunch of Nazis where I had to punch them.
Well, and what about like all these like so-called like Proud Boy rallies or whatever? And it's like they always got the masks and they always got the same uniforms. And for some reason they never get doxxed.
Right.
But but wait, we're always gonna dox them, except
There's
these
a
guys.
great video of me and Matt Taibbi breaking
Like,
down the
wait a second.
Patriot Front. Didn't the Patriot Front just disband? Google that real quick. We'll end it with this. Because I think they just disbanded, and these were the most obvious feds of all time.
Yeah,
they
that's
were
what I'm saying.
thin. They had a
like,
drum.
come
They had
on.
masks on. Yeah, they all had uniforms. It was so stupid.
So
Patriot Front
stupid.
disbands one day after FBI Director Chris Wray
Doesn't
resigned.
that seem like an odd coincidence?
Crazy. The people that we were yelling at saying that they're feds There's a great video of me and Matt Taibbi if you want to
how
find
come
it.
nobody ever followed them and doxed them?
Yeah, crazy. What are the odds?
What are the odds?
Agent provocateurs. It's a thing. They're real. Alex
Yeah.
Jones taught me about them. Listen, man, thank you very much. Thank you for everything. Appreciate you. Stay alive.
Staying alive.
All right.
I mean, I do think like one argument for me staying alive is that it's more entertaining if I'm alive than if I'm dead.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
I just hope,
Yeah.
but I could be alive and like injured, which would suck. You know?
Right.
Like the wing, just like shoot my arm off or something.
Right. No, we don't want that.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
I mean, it's like reading an article a while back about the neurochemical oxytocin, and it's the chemical that basically makes sure that a mammal mother doesn't eat her baby when she gets hungry. It gets that in us. It takes the form of like increasing trust and empathy and so forth. But they've also done research and found that it also that it increases trust and empathy and all those things for your in-group. But because you're more protective of them, like feeling that way, it actually increases distrust toward anybody considered like in the out-group. And so it's like makes you love your child more and makes you hate like the foreigner more or something like that, you know? And a lot of things are like that, where it's really your virtues that get hijacked. I mean, if you think of, you were talking about Jonestown. I mean, that story sucked me in so much, you know. Part of the reason for that is because I just got obsessed with it, but part of it is that, you know, the U.S. authorities found like 1,000 hours of recordings at the Jonestown site after the massacre, and they're all available online. And it's like sermons of his, it's them just having meetings in the middle of the night, it's just all kinds of different things. Well, for like 3 or 4 months, I had that in my headphones for that. At the time, I was working overseas when I worked for the Department of Defense, and I was working by myself overseas. And so I would be working, and I'd have my headphones on 8 hours a day. I'm listening to Jim Jones. Just
Oh, my
ranting.
God.
And I was dreaming about him, for real. But through that experience, what I found is and even to this day, like I said, I will still say it, even after I'm separated from it, it's all over, is I really sympathize with those people. The same way I sympathize with, like, you know, and I get into this in the series too, like, you know, the radical movements that emerged out of the civil rights struggle, you know, the Black Panthers and whatnot, who, you know, they went down a dark road. But when you put yourself in their shoes, you know, because say what you want about, like, if Jim Jones, just like for people out there who don't know, I mean, go listen to the podcast, but, you know, Jim Jones was a guy who, in like 1953 is when he started his first church in Indianapolis. And it's a totally open, like, mixed race church in Indianapolis. And he and his congregation are going out and putting pressure on businesses to, like, start serving, you know, to desegregate and start serving African American customers and stuff. This is a couple of years before Martin Luther King and Birmingham or whatever. He was like out front on this, right? And he would, you know, his wife would, they adopted they were the first white family to adopt an African American child in the state of Indiana. His wife would walk down the street with their adopted child, and she'd get spit on, called N-word lover, all these kind of things. I mean, he was getting death threats from, like, the American Nazi Party, from the KKK, which was very strong in Indiana back in the day. And but he was still doing all this. And if Jim Jones would have gotten hit by a bus in 1962, he would 100% be remembered today as like an early hero of the civil rights movement. Like, he really would. And when you say, like, how do people get sucked into it? Like, you think of somebody, like, one of the first things you notice, if all you know about the Jonestown story is don't drink the Kool-Aid, you've heard that. The first thing that stands out to you when you pick up a book about it is that 75% of the people who died out there were black. And, you know, as soon as, like, I had been doing another project about the Great Migration of African Americans out of the South around that time, and so I thought about it. I was like, man, these are all, like, first-generation people out in San Francisco where the Jonestown Coal was based. Because, I mean, you didn't really have the big migration out to the West Coast until the Second World War and after the Second World War. So, you know, you take, just like as one example, there was one of the women that died out there. She was like 72 years old or something in 1978 when they all died. So she was born, and she was born in 1906 in Alabama. and she's this black woman, right? And so she goes through, lives the first 40 years of her life under Jim Crow in Alabama, going through that. And then her and her husband decide to, they get up the gumption to, get on a train or get in a car or whatever and go out to California. And this is, again, back when, the world was a lot bigger for people back then. You were going off to California, it was goodbye for the most part. And so they were going, they didn't know what they were going to find out there, but they were going to go give it a try. And so they get out there, and her husband's working on the Oakland docks, and they live kind of in that Oakland docks area that today is so run down. He dies early just from overwork and everything else. And she's there now in her little front porch house, street-side house, living by herself in a neighborhood that is just completely falling apart. You got drugs, and you got gangs, and like she gets, harassed when she walks down the steps, and all these kind of things. And so this is her life. It's like, arguably, I mean, I wouldn't even say arguably, like other than just the indignity of being told you can't drink out of that drinking fountain or something, her life was actually more comfortable in Alabama under Jim Crow than it's become in this Oakland ghetto. She's safer. She lives, at least over there, she lived in a place that was a community. It was, a group of people that knew her since she was a kid, and she lived among them. Over here, she's completely alone. She has nobody. Her whole experience of her whole life with white Americans has been virtually unanimously negative. At the very least, like, if not abusive or something, it's been like condescending, And somebody tells her, somebody that she knows from somewhere says, hey, you got to come check out this new church that I'm going to. It's called the People's Temple. Come on down. There's this guy, Jim Jones. He's amazing. And so she goes down there, and what she finds is a group of people. It was not their sense of like real equality between people, not just racial, but just across the board. That was not a game. They were 100% serious about it. So she shows up to this place, and she's not treated like in a condescending sort of social justice way where it's like, oh, let us help you, or anything like that. They're like family. These people were a family. And like, it's, the first thing to understand about the Jonestown, incident is that these people loved each other, they cared about each other. And this woman comes in after her whole life experience, being alone now in Oakland, and just everything else came before that. And now she's like babysitting the white lady's kids, and they're calling her grandma and sitting on her lap, and she's not treated like she's a charity case. She's treated like a member of the family. And so you get those people who have had that experience, that side of things, right? That's going to bind you together in really significant ways. And they end up, going down because of the temper of the times. This is a civil rights organization. If you look at what happened with really like both threads of the protest movement in the 1960s, you see this thing happen where it starts to build up in the 1960s, and you have like the campus anti-war kind of hippie type protest side, and you got the civil rights side. And both of those are kind of within the energy is being channeled into into outlets that are, they're not antisocial. You know what I mean? Like, you got Martin Luther King, like, leading a movement, telling the people, basically, like, it's an American civil rights movement. It's not he's telling them we're not getting the rights we deserve as Americans, and that's what we want. You have guys like Malcolm X who can think of it that way. They thought we're an African diaspora, and we're a people, and we need to, like, focus on that. But as long as Martin Luther King was alive, he had the moral weight within the movement to sort of fend off the emerging black power elements and stuff that were happening. On the other side, like the campus, the anti-war left, if you go up to like 1968, the year of the big riot at the Democratic Convention in Chicago, Eugene McCarthy was senator running for president. He was like the only person in the political spectrum who's going to be available for the office of president he wanted to end the Vietnam War. And when you think about like, this is a time, this is not like today we want to end the Iraq War or whatever. It's like, no, like this is a matter of life and death for these protesters. Like, it's a matter of like, are they going to get drafted and sent over to this jungle to get killed for something that almost everybody at that point, even like the president and secretary of defense, we have their like backroom dialogues and stuff now, knew was a lost war and it was pointless to continue other than for like vague reasons of national honor, and you're going to have to go do this, maybe die, definitely kill, you know, and go do. So this is important to these people. It wasn't like just a ideological thing. And then the Democratic Party just completely, openly, ridiculously, like, just steals the nomination from Eugene McCarthy. You know, the Hubert Humphrey, who they put in, he didn't win a single primary. He wasn't even put into the process until way, way late. He was just installed. It was a Kamala Harris kind of thing, like in the last election, where they just decided. And so you had all these people who were, like, they had the Clean for Gene movement, which was all these hippies, all these, like, you know, college radicals and stuff who've been letting their freak flag fly all this time. They all cut their hair and they shaved and got good and clean cut so they could go door to door to, like, normie middle class people and talk to them about Eugene McCarthy. In other words, they committed to, like, they got with the program. They were like, okay, we're going to do it the right way. We're going to do it, you know, through the right channels and institutions if we do that. Civil rights movement was doing that under Martin Luther King. Same year, you have McCarthy gets, you know, robbed of the nomination. They try to protest it, and they get the living shit kicked out of them by the Chicago police. On the other side, obviously, Martin Luther King gets killed. And what you saw after that is all that energy that had previously been channeled into these productive, pro-social outlets, it just scattered to the winds. You know, those things got delegitimized, and all of a sudden, it just goes in every direction. And that's when, like, in the, you know, starting really in, like, 1969, that's when the Weatherman came about. You know, like, the Weatherman came about, like, after, you know, most of the stuff we associated with the 60s. But then into the early 70s, you just see this massive proliferation of cults and violent radical movements. You know, you had, like, an offshoot of the Black Panthers out of New York called the Black Liberation Army, and they were just hunting down cops and killing them. You know, dozens of cops across the country they just hunted down and killed. You had just truly insane groups like the Symbionese Liberation Army. You know, they were like just led by a guy who was, like, legitimately mentally ill, had been in and out of institutions, and he went to, like, you know, one of the, like, bitter clinger, like, last holdout sort of radical enclaves in Berkeley, and found a bunch of lesbians there who were, like, radical feminist lesbians, and got them to follow him. They're the ones that kidnapped Patty Hearst and, you know, got her gun and everything. And Jonestown, like, the reason there's such an interesting story to tell, like, and this is really, like, the angle I took on it, is they're a microcosm of the whole movement. You know, in the mid-50s, they're idealistic, they're in it for the right reasons, they truly believe in what they're doing, they encounter resistance, you know, from political resistance, social resistance, and as that resistance stiffens and then gets really serious, you know, when you've got people coming into the church who worked for a Modesto TV station telling them that, hey, I'm coming to you because I was just approached by the FBI asking me to come spy on you, so I don't know what's up there, but you must be doing something right, so he joined them, you know? You got that kind of stuff going on, and these people get radicalized, and then they turn violent, and, you know, out of paranoia and drugs was a big part of it, they lose their shit.
What drugs are they doing?
Well, the drugs were not, they were still done sometimes, but, like, they weren't really technically allowed for, like, the members themselves, but Jim Jones was on, he was basically, for the last 10 years of his life, it was amphetamines when you get up, barbiturates to go to sleep, and it was every day for 10 years. And,
Which is not the best for perspective.
No. And it's like, that's the thing with Adolf Hitler, too.
Yeah.
You know, you keep yourself going that way. You know, somebody who, I had read a little bit about the effects, because of the Jonestown story, I read a fair amount about the effects of long-term amphetamine use, the paranoia and mania that it can result. And so as I was getting up to the last episode, I asked one of my buddies, he was a police officer in SoCal, if he had any, like, ways, if he could figure out, get me some, like, police reports that were incidents where there was, like, usually, like, a husband and father who had taken his family hostage, and specifically if he was, like, hopped up on methamphetamines, that resulted in a murder-suicide. And he got me a big stack of these. I don't know if he was supposed to, but, like, he got these for me, and I was able to read through them. And about half of them, they ended in murder-suicide. The other half, like, some of them, the guy got shot by the cops, some of them he gave up, but about half of them ended in murder-suicide. And as I just read through these, just again and again and again, I mean, it became very obvious, like, this is what happened, except at a larger scale in Jonestown. You know, it's it's hard for people to kind of accept when you're talking about somebody like Jim Jones, who was like a raving lunatic like him, but he loved his people. Like he actually did. People say, well, if he loved them, that's not possible. How could he do that? Those are people who have never been around like domestic violence before. It's very complicated. You know, you can have husbands who are absolute monsters to their children and their wife, but they still love them. And it's weird. And like they have like an emotion, like a serious emotional crisis if they leave or something, you know? And like, it's very complicated.
These children that can read things, are they typing it out like on an iPad? Are they writing it physically? How do they do it?
Usually, so there's different forms of spelling to communicate. Often there's like a letter board, right? Sometimes it's a stencil letter board that you poke a pencil through, so you really know when you get that letter, and it's really satisfying to like get the poke through. Sometimes there's like just a laminate board where you kind of point to a letter. Some individuals are typing into a spelling kind of app on an iPad, or there's different spelling like
Can they type?
AAC devices, yeah. And then there's some individuals who end up going to the QWERTY key, you know, the typical keyboard that we all type with on a keyboard. So
there's varying levels of ability in terms of using your body.
yeah, using your body. And the thing I think why spelling has been so, you know, there's such a stigma around spelling, and I feel so bad for individuals using spelling because they're in there and they are communicating, but people have said, oh, but you need these supports, so these can't be your words, right? Like for a spelling partner, let's say, you have to kind of learn to be a communication partner. You have to learn to really understand like the mind-body disconnect and what's going on with the non-speaker in front of you. And sometimes their hand gets lost in space, so it's good to like pull the board away and like put it back in again. Or sometimes you have to cue them, like go for it. Okay, get that letter, because that will help with their motor planning, right?
Right.
So those supports are critical, but people will look at those supports and say, oh, well, that must mean they're not typing independently. But to me, that's as wild as saying, oh, you need reading glasses, you can't read. No, that's a support to help you read. You can
Right.
still read if you have reading classes, and that's how I think of the communication
There's
partner.
still no influence on the words or letters being chosen.
No.
No.
No, and I think one of the things, the stigma I think that really started for spelling was facilitated communication. Actually, this is like the first thing you asked, we're
Yeah.
coming full circle. So for a long time, there was just no hope of getting, you know, people who weren't verbal, non-speakers out. There just wasn't. And then all of a sudden, facilitated communication came along. And it was developed, I think, in Australia, I think. But this was ideas of, you know, put some pressure on someone's wrist so they can really feel where they're at in space, right? Like, they'll be able to spell. And it was a miracle. I mean, it was all over the news. This was great. And some of the first parents that were using facilitated communication started reporting there's telepathy involved. And this was at Syracuse University in the 90s. Syracuse knew about this and started kind of bearing that information. And there was a lot of like kind of, you'll be let go if you're teaching this and you're talking about this. So there was kind of big cover up. So this was new. This is not new that this was going on. But then there were some claims of, you know, sexual assault. There's awful things that happened where what was being claimed didn't happen. And so people started blaming facilitated communication. Oh, well, maybe they're pushing their hand or doing this or doing that. And I think for a lot of people who train in facilitated communication, you're using your hand to put pressure so the individual knows where the body is in space, but you're not pushing their hand. But there probably are some cases where that had happened. Well, anyway, so then it got kind of just stigmatized, right? It's pseudoscience, it's not the... And then, so spelling evolved into these forms where it was like, no touch, do not touch. And so many of those spelling groups now are helping individuals, and the big tenet of this is you cannot touch them. And that's where spelling's at now, is that you learn to communicate and there's no touch involved. But I'm one of these people that thinks like whatever the individual needs to help them communicate,
Right.
it's okay. If you need a little touch so you know where your arm is,
Right.
or sometimes it helps you go faster if there's a little push, like I think go for it, you know, help these individuals get out there.
Right. This touch is not guiding them towards specific letters. This touch is just an affirmation, just to help them.
Yeah.
To help them relax, to help them connect.
Yeah, and it was really, you know, on set sometimes, because every once in a while, some parents like hold the board and hold it there for their child, and we would use these like dry erase, you know, markers on the screen to be like, is the board moving? And it wasn't.
I mean, it's just the fact that the child can read hieroglyphics is insane. I would love to see, like cuneiform or Sumerian in particular. We had an ancient language scholar named Wes Huffon, and he was explaining how a lot of these interpretations of like the Sumerian text, which is the oldest version of, you know, a lot of these like biblical stories. In fact, he was like, I can't read it. He goes, I can read all these different languages, but this one is so different than all the others, and it doesn't have anything that's like it. Like a lot of these other languages, you can find similarities in the way they're structured, the way the sentences are structured. There's none of that with Sumerian. It's like, this is a wacky language.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't read it.
That's
And
so
he was
wild.
brilliant.
Yeah.
So when you talk to a guy like that, who's humble about it,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
but also like very well read.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know what's going on.
What does it?
Give that to the kid.
So
You know?
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity to really get into that with these nonverbal kids if you find one that, is there more than one that has this ability to do this?
I mean, I can only comment on the people I've met, but I think of all the people that we're talking to a lot, you know, for the project and now the film, yeah, I mean, it's definitely more than one. I mean, at least I know 15 or 20 who can, who seem to know various languages they haven't been taught.
15 or 20?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and one of the earlier children that Dr. Powell was studying, this boy knew really kind of odd languages like Russian and Japanese, and I think he was 5 or 6, and could just speak in different languages and knew different languages. It's absolutely remarkable.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is there like even the most out there theory about what's going on?
I mean, this is the thing, right? There hasn't been a lot of research around this phenomena, and I think I can only go again off of what spellers have said. I mean, one thing is that they say that there's a neurology behind language, right? The most baseline language is not with words. Words are these 3D objects that we attach to these thoughts and feelings, and that is the thing that they can understand, which makes sense. That would be what telepathy is, right? If you're not
Right.
using words.
Well, that is
Right.
our version of telepathy. We
Right.
make noise with our mouth, and then you can read my mind.
Right,
Sort
yeah,
of,
kind of.
Kind of.
I mean,
In a clumsy way.
yeah, but if you think of prayer, right, that's telepathy. If people who come back from a near-death experience and they say they have these communications with someone, you don't have a body, I mean, that's telepathy, right? Like, if a medium is talking to someone or getting messages from someone who's passed, like, that's telepathy. So it seems like the baseline, to me, like, all of this is proven for me that we have a soul, or, you know, there's at least, if that word is triggering into someone, that at least there's a conscious body, there's a consciousness in each of us that doesn't need a body. Like, and so I think the language thing is like we've put words over this thing, and but the telepathy, the baseline is there no matter what. And if you can understand the baseline of what's being communicated, the words don't matter. Does that make sense?
It does.
Oh, but so anyway, just on the signal thing though, again, like the real scandal here is not that they, whatever, either intentionally or were just so incompetent that they added this journalist to it and it got leaked. Like the real scandal is like when you look through the chat, and that it's like, what are we doing here? We're bombing another country in the Middle East. We're bombing the poorest country in the Middle East.
Yemen.
By the way,
which
Yemen,
has been bombed forever.
oh my God, on behalf of Israel, because they're standing up against this fucking brutal war in Gaza right now. And so we're gonna bomb these guys again. And then you have like, I gotta say, man, like I was disgusted by Tulsi Gabbard's response there. Someone who I've, said a lot of nice things about over the years and who I really supported as being the DNI. But like, literally only, J.D. Vance is the only one who offers the mildest pushback and goes, like, hey guys, this is kind of a mistake and it's kind of everything against what Donald Trump ran on. And by the way, like, it's like such an insignificant amount of our trade that even goes through this area. It's really Europe's problem, not ours. But I'll go along with it if you guys want to, if you guys say, and then they literally say on the thing, they go, we've tracked the missile guy, as they call him, this is the target they're trying to take out. They go, we've tracked him to his girlfriend's apartment building. And so we'll level the apartment building. And then Tulsi Gabbard's just like, job well done, team. Everybody's cheering it on. There's not like, nobody even has the thought to go like, like is there a way we could do this without like murdering an entire apartment building's worth of people here? Is there a way? Man, this is a lot. Like, it's like, do none of you guys even kind of believe in God? Are none of you even scared that maybe God exists and that, like, Jesus Christ, what are we doing here? There's none of that. There's not a feeling of that. There's not a sense of, like, and you know, I know I've talked about this before on the show, but we go the whole history of the war in Yemen going all the way back to Obama's first term. I mean, what we've done to this country, the poorest country in the Middle East, I mean, it was a goddamn genocide that happened in Yemen. I mean, it was the drone bomb campaign from Obama was bad enough, but the Saudi invasion and the blockade and the war on the civilian population, you know, hundreds of thousands of people died, hundreds of thousands of cases of like cholera and these other like very easily preventable and treatable diseases that babies were just dying of because they had a full blockade around the country. The U.S. Navy fucking enforcing the blockade, the U.S. Fucking refueling the Saudi fighter jets and backing them the whole war there. And the idea that we think launching a couple Tomahawks is gonna break the Houthis after they went through all that shit, there's no chance. Like, it's not, you're just killing people for no strategic benefit. There's the only thing that would actually, like, we could overthrow the Houthis if we wanted to invade the country. Like, the U.S. military could do that. But like short of that, the idea that
But you have to do, that's like a big public thing, which is bombing somehow or another, especially drone bombing, sort of like is in the ether.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost
Yeah.
abstract.
Yeah.
Like you don't, like if we sent a tier 1 team to go take this dude out, that would be front page news. That would be like an act of war. That would be like a thing, we're declaring war on this country. We've invaded their land with actual boots on the ground. It's different. For some weird reason, like you're allowed to use flying robots remote controlled by drone operators who, by the way, have some of the weirdest fucking PTSD rather.
Yeah.
These people are all fucked up for a long time because they watch these folks, because they're watching these folks. They know the people around. They get to know. They watch them for days. They see them hug their kids, and then they get that fucking call, and
you don't get any of the, and I don't know, I mean, I'm just kind of speculating here, I'm no psychologist, but there's something I think where, like if you're in the fight, if you're in the action, you know, like a lot of different, you know, primal things are going to kick up. Like you know, as all the troops say, and I've talked to a whole lot of them, it's almost unanimous to a man that they always say the thing you're fighting for once you get there is your brother next to you. Like it's not even, it's like forget the mission or whatever. It's like this is your guy right here.
Right.
And you guys are going in to make sure your buddy doesn't get his leg blown off or whatever. But when you don't have any of that, there aren't bullets whizzing at you. There's not your friend next to you. There's not this like sense of like, I had to do what I had to do. And when you're just watching it on a monitor from a safe distance, I think there's some way that fucks you up on a whole different level.
it's got to. It's got to haunt your dreams. It has to. There's no other way. I mean, you see a man holding his child and swinging her around in his arms, and then you know you're going to blow that man and that kid to smithereens.
Yeah.
And you have to, because the kids are near the dad, and we got to kill that guy. The
Yeah,
guy's a
when you
bad
got
guy.
orders, you know,
Yeah.
like that's.
And a whole apartment building. Like, what are we talking? Like thousands of people?
But
what
there's-
are we talking about? To get to this guy?
Well, you know, there's a
Mushroom
clip.
cloud? Boom.
Yeah. Well, there's a clip that Tim Pool got like a real short interview with Donald Trump during the campaign. Like I think he was the first one, but it wasn't like a long form podcast. Like he was the first podcaster, but they did like 20 minutes or something like that. But he did get this one clip out of Donald Trump on that thing where Donald Trump is eviscerating Joe Biden for bombing the Houthis for the same exact reason, because they were firing on shipping lanes. And Donald Trump's like, what type of idiot is Joe Biden? I mean, these guys, their answer for everything is to drop bombs on it. Pick up a phone. Diplomacy can work here. Like, you don't have to do this. And the fact is that there were, during the ceasefire, which Trump's envoy negotiated, which is falling apart now, but during the ceasefire, there were no Houthi attacks on the shipping lanes. Like, they stopped them. And then when the ceasefire fell apart, they picked them back up again. Now, feel however you feel about that. I'm just saying, there is a diplomatic solution here, right? Like, they are willing to, like, if there's a ceasefire, they will stop these attacks. But there's not a military solution short of invading the country and having yet another catastrophic war in the Middle East. And it's like, so which one of those do you want to pick? America first crowd? I mean, like, Donald Trump was explicitly elected for this reason, as a repudiation of the foreign policy of the last 30 years.
Right.
That we're like done with this.
Right.
We want to put America first. And as you can see, even J.D. Vance and then a little bit Pete Hegseth, their only issue, it's never the innocent people being killed. For a bunch of Christians, it's kind of weird that never comes up. But their issue is, this is us bailing out Europe, because Europe actually relies more on these shipping lanes than the United States does by orders of magnitude. But even that is part of the America First thing that Donald Trump totally ran against. Like, why is it that we have to foot the bill for everybody else's defense? That makes no sense. We're broke. Our country is in bad shape. We need those resources here.
What is the justification for these bombings? What is the public justification?
That the Houthis have attacked a few U.S. Cargo ships, and that there's, that their international trade, that they don't have a right to disrupt international trade in this way, which is like, okay, it's true. I mean, the thing that I've seen the most is like that people will go, well, we can't just turn a blind eye to this aggression by the Houthis. But I also do think, and I don't even blame people for this, because it's nobody, in the corporate media or ever talked about any of this stuff, or very rarely talked about it, never really told the story, that it's like, yeah, if you're just coming into the story now, I could see where you might think the Houthis are the aggressors. But if you're rewinding the tape from this, there is just no debate about it. I mean, there's no question that we literally started, it was in 2009 when Obama started up with the drone bombing, the then secret drone bombing campaign, and Yemen was one of the major theaters. This was where, if you remember, because it was like the biggest scandal of the Obama administration, also not talked about much in the media, but was talked about on a lot of podcasts, was that Anwar al-Awlaki and his 14 or 15-year-old son, his two American citizens, were both killed by drone bombs in Yemen. And this caused a bit of an outrage among some people, because you were like, hey, you really can't murder American citizens who have never been charged of a crime. You can't just say, I just, forget that whole Bill of Rights thing. They're on my list. And by the way, the kid was not Al-Qaeda affiliated or anything, and they claimed that wasn't intentional, but it sure seemed like it was. But so Obama had a drone, he was fighting at the time, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula had a presence in Yemen. So he's drone bombing these Al-Qaeda sites. I think the estimates were something like 95 to 96% of the people who died were not the targets. So just killing a whole bunch of innocent people. And then, as always happens in these situations, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula just grew stronger and stronger and stronger, because this is, it's insurgent math, like General McChrystal said. You kill a bunch of innocent people, and then, you kill one little girl, and she had 3 brothers and a father and 2 uncles, and they all join up Al-Qaeda now, because, fuck you, they're going to get you back for that shit.
Everyone's radicalized.
Yes. So we're doing this drone bomb campaign over there. It's completely failing, and Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is just getting stronger and stronger. At the same time, Obama kind of bribed off the dictator of Yemen at the time, this guy, Saleh, and he was like, listen, if you let us do our fucking drone bombing campaigns in here, we'll give you a whole bunch of weapons and money. And so he took the deal. And then he used those weapons to go attack this group, the Houthis. And then he also started losing to them. Even with the U.S. weapons, the Houthis were fucking him up. And then, little by little, the Houthis, kind of took over the whole country. And then, now, the Houthis are also enemies with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. These are radical Sunnis, Al-Qaeda versus radical Shiites, the Houthis. So they're fucking enemies, and they're fighting a civil war while all this is going on. And then Saudi Arabia decided to invade in early 2015. And in 2015, and you could look this up if you Google Obama to placate the Saudis. These are literally what the Obama officials told the New York Times. I believe it was the New York Times. They told them that literally this is why. So Obama stabbed the Houthis in the back, took Saudi Arabia's side, took Al-Qaeda's side, started fighting fighting in a civil war against the Houthis, which is, in effect, taking Al-Qaeda's side in that war. And so the Saudis invade the country. Now, Obama said essentially that because the Saudis are an important trading partner, and they were pissed off at us at the time. They were very upset about the war in Iraq. The Saudis were the ones in the region who were against it the whole time because they knew. They were like, you're just going to give Baghdad to Iran, basically, and that's their big enemy is Iran. And then they were also really pissed off because Obama did the one decent thing he did in his administration was he worked out that deal with Iran. Same goddamn thing that Trump tore up and is now demanding they get back into some type of nuclear deal. But so, in order to placate the Saudis, Obama goes, okay, we'll back your war here. And like I said, full blockade around the country, refueling their military jets.
Quiet support for Saudis entangles U.S. and Yemen. This is,
Yep.
here it is. Obama, in an awkward twist, becomes Saudi Arabia's defender.
And it is hard to overstate how brutal the Saudis were in this war. I mean, like, you know, think of Gaza, something not too unsimilar to that. But you're talking like a full blockade around the country. This was the poorest country in the Middle East before any of this. Full blockade around the country. The Saudis were bombing. They were bombing their agriculture. They were bombing their like wheat silos. They were bombing their irrigation ditches. They're just like a total war on the civilian population, all the way from 2015 into 2021, when it essentially ended in like an Afghanistan style, I guess we give up. Like it was just eventually the Saudis, I think the Houthis, you know, one of the things that's really interesting that happened this whole time, like you were talking about the drone wars. So back in 2009, first of all, it was secret. The drone program wasn't, everyone knew it. There had been good reporting on it. But the way they got the good reporting was like people found the drones in Yemen, you know, and they'd take like little, you know, grainy cell phone pictures and be like, look, this is a U.S. drone. So there's clearly, but actually the Obama's press secretary, it's not, God damn it, not Jake Harney, his first press secretary. I'm blanking on his name. But he admitted this on NBC News. It was like a really amazing. But he was talking about how the drone program. This is years later, like 2012. He's at NBC News now, and he was talking about how when he used to get questions about the drone program, he wasn't allowed to even acknowledge that it was real. So he would just sit there. Yeah, Robert Gibbs. I apologize. I should have remembered that.
I was told not to even acknowledge the drone program.
There's video of this.
When I went through the process of becoming press secretary, one of the first things they told me was, you're not even to acknowledge the drone program. You're not even to discuss that it exists, said former White House press secretary Robert Gibbs on Up with Chris Hayes Sunday.
So now think about, okay, by the way, there is video of this. It wasn't, you know, I don't know if it's in this article or not, but I mean, that was essentially the point. But the thing in the video, it's so funny, is like they all are laughing about it. Like they're talking about like what a funny thing it is. Like imagine being in the position where you can't admit that a real thing's real and journalists are asking you questions. And he said, because it is kind of funny in a weird way, but that's like, you'd think a newsman that wouldn't be the number one thing.
I tell you about my friend in Colorado, they let wolves loose near his land.
No.
Yeah, they just let wolves loose in Colorado. They let a bunch loose in one part of the state, and then they let a bunch more loose. He said it was 5. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what he was told. And
for what purpose? Just
they decided to repopulate the state with wolves, and they're getting wolves from like British Columbia, so these big ass fucking Canadian wolves. They're coming in and fucking the elk up. And this is outside of Aspen. So these are like all these really wealthy people.
holy shit.
And they let wolves loose on their property. And by the way, there's livestock there. These people have cattle. They have all sorts of. So far, the wolves in his area haven't attacked cattle because there's an abundance of elk up there. It's a big elk corridor where the elk migrate. And I took a picture and posted it up on Instagram of an elk leg that he found. Just like within 2 weeks of them being released, they had already started killing elk on his property. So a wolf took out an elk and left the leg bone just laying in the snow.
Wait, how many wolves did they let go?
5, he thinks.
But
This is what he
don't
told me.
wolves, do they release them as a pack?
I don't know if they will pack up. I don't know if they knew each other before. I don't know what the fucking neighborhood
Did they
the
grow
wolves
up
they took
together?
from. Yeah. So that's what we
Oh,
found.
shit.
So that's an elk leg that's just been stripped down, the lower leg, no meat on it, just the hoof and some fur and shit. Just laying in it. just a bunch of disturbed areas. It was all fucked up. You could tell some shit went down. So we found that piece there. They had dragged that from somewhere else, but there was a carcass up there too. So they basically can kill. They could probably kill 1 or 2 elk a day, and they probably will do that now. And so the elk population will rapidly diminish. The elk have no idea. They've never evolved around wolves. These elk are in like who knows how many generations with no wolves. So the United States had wolves all throughout the West, and then they eradicated them because they fucking kill everything. They kill livestock, they kill horses, they pack up, they get big packs, and then they devastate livestock, sheep herders, cattle. So they all murdered all the wolves. So now these people, these greenies, these little cutie pies, decided to bring back the most intelligent, telepathic apex predator that operates in packs, and he decided to let them loose near a ski town. Like, congratulations.
Why the fuck?
Because they're cute, because these are people that grew up in cities and they don't understand. It's called ballot box biology. It's a bunch of people who grew up in the city, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and they don't know what a wolf really is. They just think wildlife's amazing. And then so you've let loose apex predators in an area where nothing is prepared for them. These animals don't know to look for wolves. They've never experienced a wolf before. They don't have a natural instinct to run away when they see the wolves. They don't know what the fuck is going on. And then you've got cattle.
You can't tell wolves what to kill either.
Of course not. Well, here's even better. The first ones they got, so they had a mandate to get these. Colorado voted. They voted it to release wolves. And so the governor had to get it done within a certain period of time. And so they got wolves from Oregon that had been killing cattle. So these wolves, they captured them because they had been killing cattle, and then they released them in Colorado where they, wait for it, started killing cattle.
Oh, shit.
Duh. So wolves are awesome, but they were making their way into Colorado by themselves. They were already coming down from Wyoming. There's wolves in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and they were making their way down naturally. But these idiots decided to accelerate the process and introduce this completely new element outside of a fucking ski town that's going to kill people's dogs for sure. If they get to a healthy population, you're never going to be able to let your dog go outside.
Yeah.
That's over. Cats dead. Everybody dead.
They're like 10 times worse than coyotes. You remember coyotes?
They're giant
you ever
coyotes.
seen coyotes jump fences?
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, there's no protecting my chickens from fucking coyotes.
I saw a coyote jump a fence with one of my chickens in its mouth. Jumped a 6-foot-high wrought iron fence like it was nothing. Bow! Touched the top of the fence with its feet with a chicken in its mouth. And right over the top. I was like, whoa. I was so delusional.
Yeah.
I thought, like, oh, this fence is this big. They can't get over that. Dude, one jump. Feet to the top, other feet to the top, over the top with a chicken in its mouth.
All my neighbors have red lights on their fences. That's the only thing that stops coyotes, I say.
Oh, they won't jump over a red light?
I have no fucking idea. But they all have like, it looks like a red bicycle light on every panel of their fence.
They're little monsters.
What state?
They're wolves, too, by the way.
They are?
Coyotes are wolves. Yeah, they're small wolves.
I remember, it's funny, the little things you remember. I remember you talking about the coyotes honey dicking your dog one time.
Yeah.
I always think that's the funniest phrase, honey dicking.
Yeah, they try to honey dick your dog. So what they do is one coyote, I've told this story before, but I'll say it quick. I went to this pet store that I used to go to. And one of the guys that worked in the pet store, he was a veterinarian. And he brought in, someone had brought in this pit bull that was covered in cuts. Like his whole body was like hundreds of stitches. And he's like, what happened? He was like, I don't know. He got out. And then, when I came home, he was outside the fence, and this is what he looked like. So this guy, they stitched the dog up, and then he follows a blood trail into the woods outside of his house where he finds 9 dead coyotes. So they honey-dicked, a giant pit bull. Like one of them super jacked, muscular pit bulls with a fucking fire hydrant head.
The kind that are on the front of rap albums.
Terrifying pit bull. And this pit bull just killed everyone. They fucked with the John Wick of pit bulls. And he just killed them all. Killed all the coyotes. They were all he said it looked like Vietnam. He said they were just torn apart. Because once the dog killed them, he's not going to stop. He's gonna start shaking them. You
Yeah.
know, picking, especially a pit bull like that that's in a blood rage that just fight for its life. Like, it was probably so happy, like so happy to do this, because pit bulls just want to fight all the time.
I've been wanting to do this every fucking
He was
day
so
I wake
pumped.
up.
It was a guy who's a jiu-jitsu black belt and a drunk grab. And he was like, thank you. Thank you. I've been practicing for this my whole life. But you imagine the scene? Imagine the scene, just dead coyotes, just ripped apart, just throats torn open, guts hanging out, legs broken. Because this dog, if a dog like that bites a coyote's leg, that leg's broken. That's a shattered leg. That leg doesn't work anymore.
The poundage that pit bulls bite is fucking wild.
You know what a wolf is? It's like 5 times stronger.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah, that's how crazy these retards are that let loose these apex telepathic super predators into a ski town. We're filled with super rich people. And the super rich people, right now, they're finding out about this. They are freaking the fuck out.
I bet they are.
Oh, yeah. All my buddy who lives out there, all his neighbors, they're all trying to figure out what they can do. You know, they're all collared, too. So there's an app, and you can get on the app and find out where the monsters are. Yeah, you want to get scared?
Yeah, I want to get. Hang on, I gotta get that app.
You're
I gotta get that app.
walking? How about you're walking, and then
You
you
get an alert?
see the fucking app is showing you they're behind you. All 5 of them behind you, and you're with your family. But maybe you voted on that because you think wolves are amazing. That's Little Red Riding Hood, bro. That's
We can track
the
these
3
wolves
pigs.
on an
You
app?
Track them on an app.
That's kind of cool.
It's kind of cool to know where the monsters are. But they
They do that with sharks, great white sharks.
But these people in the neighborhood are all tracking these wolves. So they're all freaking out because these wolves are like circling their homes, circling their property.
Fuck.
Well, some of
that.
them have gone right through fields with cattle and not done anything about it. Yeah, they don't even understand why. They haven't attacked any cattle yet. But these are ones that are outside of Aspen. So the ones that they brought in from Oregon, that's not outside of Aspen. That's a different spot. Those are the ones that were depredation tags. They were already killing wildlife, or they were already killing cattle.
What state do you think has the most predators? Like Australia has the most predators in the world.
country?
In our country, yeah.
I'd say Alaska for sure.
Florida.
Oh yeah, that's a good call.
Florida's
yeah, no,
fucking
Florida
crazy.
for sure. Florida now, because you brought in reptiles. Yeah, 100%. Florida has more pythons in the Everglades than all the rest of the world.
Yeah. Do you see those kids that go in? You see those kids that dive in and grab them?
I had
Yoink.
Python Cowboy on the show. He brought me up. Don't we have a python head laying around here somewhere? Something?
Oh, look at that! Look at that!
Yeah.
Apex predator, Florida
Florida's
is
jacked.
No one even comes close
No
to
one's
Florida.
even close. Wait, a
Oh,
minute.
wait,
What's Maine?
Maine?
Why does Maine? What is it?
Vermont. That's got
Right. Okay. So the one with the boot,
Oh, this is not good, guys.
the boot is Massachusetts, right? Or no, that's New York. We're so stupid. You know who could draw the whole map by hand? Al Franken.
Vermont.
Okay. Yeah, it's
What
Massachusetts
predators
is
are
the
in
one
Vermont?
with the hook. Okay, so Vermont predators. Yeah, what predators are in Vermont? That must be like wolverines and shit. Oh, red and gray foxes, coyotes,
Bobcats.
black bears, fishers, bobcats, and red and gray foxes, with wolves and lynx also present, although the later are rare. Latter.
Good God.
It's still whatever the method is, it certainly works.
But it's interesting because you've been able to excel above so many, and it makes me wonder. Like, I always am fascinated by whether it's a Tiger Woods or whatever the athlete is or whatever the game they play. What separates the very best from everyone else? Like, I know in martial arts, there's a series of factors that have to do with genetics, training, coaches, sparring partners, and then ultimately discipline and drive. But with chess, it's all mental. Physical has nothing to do with it. So do you think it's a genetic thing? Do you think you have a unique mind for chess? Do you think it's this balance that you keep with enthusiasm and obsession? Like, what do you think separates you from everyone else?
I think it has to be a variety of factors. I think there's no doubt that I'm incredibly naturally gifted at the game. Like otherwise, I wouldn't have come this far. And my dad is incredibly good with numbers. He started playing chess quite late, but became decent. Like my mother was quite smart, and my sisters are very intelligent too. So like it's clear that there are some good genes, and I just I happened to find also an environment early on where I lived near Oslo, which had probably the best chess environment there was in Norway at the very least, where there were I had access to coaches, and I had access to like a little training group of other ambitious kids. After that, I think the most important thing that I've done is that I haven't really listened to people who want me to do things like a certain way, because that's the way things have always been done, especially with the Soviet chess school. That was the dominant one for so many years. So I've always sort of gone my own way, tried to have as much fun. Everything has to be about enjoyment. And yeah, I cannot tell you why, but I just like understand the game better than the others. Like I don't calculate necessarily as far as the other, but my intuition, like for short lines, constantly evaluating is just better.
It's just it's always just such an interesting thing to analyze, like high performers, and just to wonder like what it is that separates high performers. When you say your father started playing late, how old was he?
Oh, I think he started playing about 14, 15, something like that. In chess, that's very. But he never like took it seriously enough that he wanted to, like he pursued it, but
as a hobby.
As a hobby, yeah.
Well, when you say take it seriously, you mean like you do.
Yeah.
Right. This is what makes me think about epigenetics. Like we still don't exactly know how much information is transferred between parents to children, and it seems like there's a lot of talents, whether it's like singing talent or sports talent, that you have to wonder, like, is that coming from genes, or is that coming from the environment which this child grows up, which this person, or is it a combination of all those factors? Like, I wonder if someone gets a very intelligent person gets very good at chess early on, I wonder if some information or some proclivity for the game gets transferred.
I think the reaction in the chess community, at least with certain people, was more along the lines of how could such a lousy player have such a good son at chess with my dad. It's still, whatever the method is, it certainly works.
But it's interesting because you've been able to excel above so many, and it makes me wonder, like, I always am fascinated by whether it's a Tiger Woods or whatever the athlete is or whatever the game they play, what separates the very best from everyone else. Like, I know in martial arts, there's a series of factors that have to do with genetics, training, coaches, sparring partners, and then ultimately discipline and drive. But with chess, it's all mental. Physical has nothing to do with it. So do you think it's a genetic thing? Do you think you have a unique mind for chess? Do you think it's this balance that you keep with enthusiasm and obsession? Like, what do you think separates you from everyone else?
I think it has to be a variety of factors. I think there's no doubt that I'm incredibly naturally gifted at the game. Like otherwise, I wouldn't have come this far. And my dad is incredibly good with numbers. He started playing chess quite late, but became decent. Like my mother was quite smart, and my sisters are very intelligent too. So like it's clear that there are some good genes, and I just I happened to find also an environment early on where I lived near Oslo, which had probably the best chess environment there was in Norway at the very least, where there were I had access to coaches, and I had access to like a little training group of other ambitious kids. After that, I think the most important thing that I've done is that I haven't really listened to people who want me to do things like a certain way, because that's the way things have always been done, especially with the Soviet chess school. That was the dominant one for so many years. So I've always sort of gone my own way, tried to have as much fun. Everything has to be about enjoyment. And yeah, I cannot tell you why, but I just like understand the game better than the others. Like I don't calculate necessarily as far as the other, but my intuition, like for short lines, constantly evaluating is just better.
It's always just such an interesting thing to analyze, like high performers, and just to wonder like what it is that separates high performers. When you say your father started playing late, how old was he?
Oh, I think he started playing about 14, 15, something like that. In chess, that's very. But he never like took it seriously enough that he wanted to, like he pursued it, but
As a hobby.
as a hobby. Yeah.
Well, when you say take it seriously, you mean like you do.
Yeah.
Right. This is what makes me think about epigenetics. Like we still don't exactly know how much information is transferred between parents to children, and it seems like there's a lot of talents, whether it's like singing talent or sports talent, that you have to wonder, like, is that coming from genes, or is that coming from the environment in which this child grows up, which this person, or is it a combination of all those factors? Like, I wonder if someone gets a very intelligent person gets very good at chess early on, I wonder if some information or some proclivity for the game gets transferred.
I think the reaction in the chess community, at least with certain people, was more along the lines of how could such a lousy player have such a good son at chess with my dad.
First of all, what is it like to buy a company for $44 billion and then people call you a Nazi on that same thing that you bought?
I did not see it coming. It's classic. People will go almost anything down.
Yeah. Oh, he's never gonna stop.
Wait, what?
What is it like? Like all of a sudden, like
hit-
people used to. The left was in love with you,
Yeah.
and now the same idiots are calling you a Nazi. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life.
I mean,
There's so many examples
Yeah,
of
yeah.
people saying my heart goes out to you.
Sure,
You did
sure.
it with a little enthusiasm that probably wouldn't be recommended
obviously-
with hindsight.
yes, but
But-
I was obviously meant in the most positive spirit possible.
Yes.
Yeah,
Obviously.
obviously.
But it's so strange where people want to think that you are openly publicly doing secret Nazi Sieg
Right.
Heil hand motions.
And now I can never point at things diagonally. I can only point at things there and there, and then so you have to divide that.
Yeah.
Because that's where the spaceship is, over there. That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
When CNN, when I was in
It's
all
like
my trouble,
absurd.
every time CNN used a photo of me, it was one of the photos from the UFC weigh-ins, where I go like this, welcome to the weigh-ins. So every photo is me. Every photo is me with
It's absurd.
It's so crazy.
Well, it's deliberate propaganda.
Yes.
So that they know it was not. It was obviously not meant in a negative way. That I literally said my heart goes out to you, and it was very positive. The entire speech was very positive. I was being very enthusiastic about the future in space, and it was a great crowd. So
Yeah, you got a little pumped up.
yeah, it popped up exactly.
Yeah, that's all it is. Obviously.
Obviously.
There's
So-
video of Tim Walsh
Yes.
doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Exact same thing. And
Yes.
he said, of course, it's a Nazi salute. He said that.
Right.
This is how crazy things have gotten. Like,
Well, it's coordinated propaganda. So coordinated propaganda. Doesn't it seem weird that the legacy media all says the same thing? They all say the same thing at the same time, using the same phrases that they don't even bother picking up as the thesaurus.
right.
So like right before, the debate between Biden and,
Sharp as a
Trump. Everyone was saying sharp as like, who says sharp as a tack? But
Yeah, exactly.
it's not a common phrase.
It's definitely not common to be repeated on air with multiple people simultaneously. That's weird.
Yes,
That's coordinated.
100%.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like hundreds of people saying it simultaneously. They just got their instructions.
Yeah.
So I mean, essentially, the Dem leadership or political leadership, they issue their instructions, and their puppets carry it out.
Yeah.
And they're just like puppets in a puppet show.
What has this experience been like for you as a person? Like to deal with all this hate and attack, also have the responsibility of keeping free speech alive with X, and just going into this insane pile of...
It's stressful. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty stressful, actually.
Yeah, these are real enemies.
Like, I think they actually want to kill me. I mean, the reason I know, well, they say so online. There's like Reddit forums where they don't just want to kill me; they want to desecrate my corpse. Type of thing. It's
And
not.
what are they saying? Why? What is the primary?
I mean, I think it's sort of just an antibody response. I mean, it's like they're like, well, he's a Nazi, type of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm not a Nazi, but if the legacy media is saying that I'm a Nazi, and that's all you read, then you're kind of in like, well, he's Hitler. We should assassinate Hitler, shouldn't we? Like, I mean, why did that guy try to kill Trump and almost succeeded? Why did he do that?
Well, I'd like to know that.
Also, like Doge started as like a sort of a meme coin,
Right.
It was like a joke, cryptocurrency involving memes and dogs. Mm-hmm.
Which is so funny that the letters wind up being perfect.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was originally going to call it like the Government Efficiency Commission, which is a very boring name. And then people online were like, no, it needs to be the Department of Government Efficiency. And I was like, you know what? You're right.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more evidence of the simulation.
Totally.
That little
Like the
Shiba
sheer
Inu.
like our mascot is a cute dog.
And it's a meme coin. The meme coin's probably worth a lot of money right now, right? Like every time you tweet about it,
Probably. I don't
shoots
know.
up.
Yeah.
The whole meme coin thing is bananas.
Yeah.
It is so bananas that people dump real money into these coins, and then you could just pump them up and sell
like
them.
a casino or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's totally
And
gambling.
people just do whatever the greater fool theory and like
Yeah.
musical chairs and whoever's like the last to sit down loses type of thing.
And somehow or another, it's still legal. Like that's
I
how.
mean, the thing is, I think not too many people. I mean, it's sort of like you go to the casino. Like if you expect to win at the casino, you're being a fool. Okay?
Right.
So I think if you expect to win at meme coins, you're being foolish. Yeah.
Yeah. But
You're not going to win at meme coins. It's like but if you want, like, don't sink your life savings into a meme coin.
No, but
That
you
would be
can
insane.
gamble a little, and you can
Yeah.
ride waves and win a
Yeah.
little and lose a little.
If you want to have some fun,
Yeah.
and don't come, then play with meme coins.
But if you put your
don't bet the
family's
farm.
if you put your
don't bet
family's
the farm
wealth
on a meme coin,
in the Hock
at the risk
coin,
of saying something
Yeah.
bold and outrageous, don't bet the farm on a meme coin.
The weird one is the pump and dumps. Like people
happen all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And people get shocked that somebody pump and dumped. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? Did you like? I was hoping to dump. I was hoping to make all the money out of this. I can't believe they got me. Like,
Yeah.
it's just weird that it's legal still.
I mean, casinos are legal.
Yeah.
And
It is like
people
a
just
casino.
lose money at casinos.
Yeah.
You know.
But you can't rig a casino like a pump and dump. You could rig a pump and dump. You know.
Yeah, I guess so.
JD, what was the whole experience like for you? Like starting from first contact with Josh and, you know, how your situation unfolded where you were getting wrongfully
Yeah,
accused.
it all really started is because I had developed a relationship with a woman in my office who I had known for many years. And that was a mistake on my part. And it was contentious. It was really beautiful for a long time, like many relationships are. And then it started to entangle, disentangle. And
Shocker.
yeah, right. I mean, and it was all my fault, Joe. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really contrite about the situation because I'm very aware of my mistakes. And I've made amends with her. And thankfully she has accepted my apologies because I put her in a position where she should have never been in as being an employee of mine. But I'd known her for 19 years. I'd never really been at the head of such a big office. I mean, it's about 100 people. So for me, it was a really big thing. And there's a romance that goes with kind of winning an election and coming in and trying to make a difference. I think it swept us up, and we really genuinely cared about each other. But then it started to kind of fail, and it was my fault. And I brought a lot of toxicity to the relationship and I don't like the word toxic. I don't know why I don't. But
Well, it's
but
compromised today.
yeah,
right?
it is.
A
It
little
is.
bit.
It is. But that's exactly probably what it was. And
Yeah.
so I'm lucky that. But so, anyways, there was arguments that were caught, you know, on camera with her and I, that were released to the public, and it showed us, you know, me arguing with her and raising my voice, and so it was an extremely embarrassing time in my life. But so this was all happening amidst this. And so it all really did start happening when I exonerated those Nancy Smith and Joseph Allen in 2022. My life changed because I knew there would be consequences to actions like that because it creates financial problems. People are suing people in federal courts. So it causes problems even in the sense that I was very close with police. I was a county prosecutor. I'm a very pro-police man. And so it was difficult, the strain that it put on some of the police departments, even though it was an old case. You know, I'm still friends with a lot of these detectives. And to sort of make decisions like that where you have to kind of disagree, it can be difficult. It could strain relationships. But I really didn't realize the extent of how much it would do it. So when I exonerated Nancy Smith and Joseph Allen, which is one of the worst cases I've ever seen, I thought that it was the worst case I'd ever seen. And then I got Josh's case. And after I was going through all that hardship, basically on October 1st of 2024, I was charged with 3 felonies: tampering with records, intimidation, and bribery. It was shocking to me because I couldn't figure out what the conduct was that they were referring to. So what in essence it was is because of that fallout from the videos that were released, and she didn't have a part in releasing the videos, and so she had called us in the summertime, even though we weren't really talking a bunch, and she had kind of expressed her sorrow that those videos had gotten out, and that she didn't intend for them to, and that she kind of wanted some help with the media about how can we kind of help a little bit with the PR. And my partner and my chief of staff, Jim Burge, who's a legend unto himself, he's the best writer I've ever seen. So he wrote a statement, and we were supposed to be prepared for her lawyers if they wanted to review it and see if they agreed with it or change it or anything like that. So. And to prove that that's what occurred was I have text messages from her on the day that Jim wrote the statement that says, you know, I trust Jim and his magic pen because she knew how good of a writer he was. And then the next day, when I'm supposed to be intimidating him, according to the state, when I'm supposed to be intimidating her, according to the state, I received a text message apologizing for this situation that we're in because we both were just really. It was dramatic to have your personal life right in even a small town like that. It was dramatic. So that's really what happened. But what they alleged was, they alleged that we had created this false narrative, this false document, and then intimidated her into adopting it. That was the allegation, which is completely false. And we had all the evidence to prove it. So I was fairly confident in my case because I'm a lawyer. I was a defense attorney for 15 years before I took office. So I'm fairly knowledgeable about what constitutes a good case or not, and I had a great case. But the stress that it put on my family and my mother and my father, just awful. You know, I have nieces and nephews. I'm a bachelor, but I've got nieces and nephews with my last name, and that really bothered me. And so while I'm battling with this, the interesting thing, I'm charged on October 1st. On October 4th, and they had, once we broke up in 23, they had kind of been courting her because they knew that she was my weakness, that the contentious relationship, and I think they were hoping that they would turn her on me. And so they did as much as to exploit and try to utilize our relationship against me. In fact, the lead detective that was investigating us was attempting to sleep with her at the same time. Attempting to sleep with her, had text messages, asking for nude photographs, asking to go over her house. This is while he's investigating. He's trying to sleep with my girlfriend. Saying stuff like, you should get back at him. You should get back at him.
How dumb is this guy to make this in text messages?
I couldn't believe it when she showed.
You just want to think the people that are evil, that are manipulating people and falsely trying people, they're like evil geniuses.
Joe, it was an extraordinary. That's why at first I didn't believe it. I was like, why would he write it? Why would he do that?
That's
and
so
then
crazy.
she shared those messages with me. She showed me them. I didn't get to actually physically, and then later I acknowledged it. But so what it all occurred was in 2020. I won an election. I went against my own party, and I ran in a primary, and I ended up winning. And then my relationship with the sheriff, who actually ended up investigating me for this case that I'm referring to, we had a pretty good relationship there for the first couple of months when I got elected. I had asked for a couple of my deputies to be, or a couple of my investigators to be deputized, which is a pretty standard procedure. He agreed. And then he hired the individual that I had defeated in the election, and the whole attitude changed. Everything changed. It was now very contentious. He had withdrawn his desire to deputize my investigators. The relationship turned very sour very fast when he hired my predecessor, which is unusual to have a lawyer working in the sheriff's department anyways, because statutorily I'm the lawyer for the sheriff's department. So it's an unusual move to even hire a lawyer in a sheriff's department. You can probably get 2 deputies for that kind of money. So it was unusual in a sense. And then, so the relationship just soured, and it was kind of like they were coming after me immediately. And then in late 23, they actually hired then the guy that's running against me, another lawyer, who was a former employee of mine, who's now the Lorain County prosecutor. They had hired him. So the agency that was investigating me had hired my predecessor, and then the individual who was now running against me for the office. 2 lawyers. First of all, in a smaller town, I mean, we have about 300,000, a tenth maybe out of the 88 counties in Lorain County. It's fairly high, but it's a small town. To hire 2 lawyers on a sheriff's department is unusual, and they were both my political enemies. And then the detective that's investigating me is attempting to sleep with my girlfriend. So if you can think of a less objective investigation, Joe, I'm all ears. You know,
What a fun workplace environment.
I'm telling you.
What was it like going to that office every day?
It was wild. So really, what happened was on October 1st they charged me with the felonies. I was flabbergasted because I was kind of so confident in their inability to ever get anything like that on me that I was kind of boasting in the sense that, hey, all you had to do is go to Elyria Municipal Court, grab a complaint, you can do it. Never thinking that it would actually happen. Yeah, because I was very confident that I did nothing illegal. So what occurred was, on October 4th, it makes the papers on October 1st. October 4th, the woman that I had a relationship with, she sees it in the paper. She's walking in the store and she sees it in the paper, and she sees me and my chief of staff, who she was very close with, and her instinct was to go, well, what'd they do? Like, she had no idea that the conduct that they had interviewed her about was actually the conduct they had used to charge me. So she was wondering, like, what the hell did we do? She had no idea. So that very same day, she sent text messages to the detective in charge. And she said, what are you guys doing? These guys, JD never bribed me. These are false charges. All this is on text message. He never bribed. What are you doing? You turned our personal life into charges against JD. This is crazy. And she was emphatic that she wanted to speak with me. And the problem was, I had an order by the court that I was not to speak to her because her lawyer had represented that she didn't want to speak with us. So and she was trying to get to me to tell me what had happened, but I couldn't speak with her. And so she was growing more frustrated. Eventually she spoke to our lawyers. But what happened was that I was charged 30 days before the election, and that's devastating. I mean, and so what happened was on October 4th, when she sent the text message in, I was entitled to those text messages. Those are exculpatory. I was entitled to those immediately. And they waited a month, and they waited till 2 days after the election on November 7th, and they gave me the text messages that showed everything I had said was true. It was...
Nobody wants to believe that politics and that law enforcement could be that dirty.
So this is what's going on
wow.
while I'm trying to get his attention. And I have no fucking idea
I'm
about
losing my
any of
mind.
that.
You know
What
what I
a
mean?
perfect storm.
Oh, my God.
So I then, when I made contact with JD, he started explaining this to me, and I'm very I approach this work like a surgeon, or how I picture a surgeon would approach an operation. I'm single-handedly focused on making the kidney transplant or whatever, and however you want to analogize it. So I was hearing him, but I was kind of the mindset that those are your problems. I understand. This
Which they
sounds
were.
wild. But I said, you should now know what it feels like, because I was pissed that he wasn't paying attention, because these guys were so remarkably, in my mind, so demonstrably innocent.
JD, why didn't you contact them?
I was going through hell. I had been kind of attacked. They've been trying to get special prosecutors on me for a
because it was
year.
happening like in the cloud of it all. You just
Yeah.
you had to focus on.
I
that
had
one
to
thing.
completely self-preserve, and because I had thought that I was going to be a politician for a long time, Joe. I was really passionate about it, and so it was really important to me. And I had never dreamed that I would ever be charged with felonies. It's insane. So it really, Jim and I had been fighting though for a year. I mean, we were battle torn. I mean, we always joked around about how we're gunfighters. You face that way, I'll face this way, and we just got to fight our way out. And it had been that way for a year. So I was kind of I was stressed. It was very difficult to think about focusing my mind on anything else other than trying to exonerate myself first.
Which is
and we
also
did.
good for your opponents because it makes you bad at your job.
Awful. It gums everything up.
Of course.
I started to understand how on a national level what effects that has.
Imagine what Trump.
It's the same. It's a similar thing.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't care what your opinion is of that man. To have the mettle to face what he faced and continue on a path of getting anything accomplished, let alone what he accomplished, if you don't stand up and cheer for that, no, the human cost of these prosecutions, you're hearing it right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
I still haven't gotten over it.
This
The
is
lawfare is very un-American. It's
Well-
a very un-American thing to do, to unjustly accuse someone of crimes and use your position of power to try to arrest that person and jail that person. That's very un-American.
well,
That's how we should all look at it. Instead of
something-
looking at it in terms of like parties and this is, these are my people, this is against me, this is for me. It's bad for the country.
It is.
It's real bad for the country. We are supposed to represent freedom. On the world stage, we're supposed to be the people that have the most freedom of speech, the most freedom of expression, the best path to success if you're a nobody. This is supposed to be a place where everybody gets a shot. And if you allow the system to unjustly accuse and prosecute people for crimes that are demonstrably false, it's very, very un-American. And that's how we should look at it. I mean, instead of this fucking fuck my enemies, us
Yeah.
versus them, you're kind of committing treason. You're kind of ruining everyone's. If you could pull it off, you ruin our faith in what this thing is supposed to be.
Well, look, I think that quite obviously there are prosecutions that need to happen when someone commits a violent crime, when there's domestic abuse, when there's robbery, all of that. That's
yeah.
not
For
but
sure.
what should not be lost on people, because you saw it play out on a national stage with the president. You are now hearing about it in a smaller, not a small town, but a smaller jurisdiction. And the irony of this, well, it struck me as I was speaking to JD the first time, is here's a man that's fighting for his life. And I'll confess to you, I used it to say, I continually said to JD, imagine you have to go through this for 30 years
It's not even
behind bars. So when I finally got through to him that night, we must have spoke 8 times that night. Yeah. He knew that there was a problem with this case, and he was creating understandably so, we don't have time for me to actually sit and listen to you and go through the evidence again, because he had been through it before in the Ohio 4 case. So as Dame Fortune would have it, I don't know where I heard that, but as the way it worked out is that 3 or 4 days after we spoke, the charges against JD were dropped.
I mean, I was very surprised to hear Elon's answer to your alien question the other day, which I understand that
probably couldn't talk about it anyway.
That's how I take all of his answers about aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay.
nice try. I had to try.
All right.
But like,
and
there's
look,
no
I
way.
don't ask him about it off air either.
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean,
like,
you got to
okay.
respect a man's like private. Like he's got NDAs up the wazoo for that kind of shit.
Also, he has top secret military clearance and he runs SpaceX.
Bingo.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Bingo.
I wouldn't say jack shit.
And that's where flat Earth
they're
comes
all
in.
real. They're very subtle. That's what I would say too.
Exactly. And I think that flat Earth, a lot of the evidence that gets cited as flat Earth, like for example, NASA fakes footage. And if you look into it, it's fucking obvious that NASA is putting out fake footage. They're clearly on wires in some of that footage. Clearly, some of that footage is underwater, and there's bubbles fucking floating up and shit. But
Which
that,
footage?
just like NASA publishes all kinds of footage, from like the ISS to they have live streams to they do like videos, and no one ever watches it because like whoever watches random
So you
NASA
think some
footage,
of the ISS footage is fake?
there's a lot of footage you can find online that is coming from NASA where there's like little slips or like a guy is like they're doing their floating shit and then the buddy reaches out and grabs where a wire is to help his buddy get back into frame, like little slips of the mind where they're like just trying to orchestrate. Yeah, and
I've never seen any of that.
and who knows
I've
if
seen
it's
the moon
who knows if
landing
it's
footage
real
that
or
looks
not.
hokey.
Yeah, so all I'm saying is that gets cited by flat earthers as like NASA's covering up flat Earth.
Okay.
And what I'm saying is that there's a lot of reasons why NASA would cover up and produce fake footage from something like the ISS, and every single one of them rhymes with aliens. Because if there's any type of aliens going on up here, it's very possible that they are up there in that fucking space station, or they're
What?
or like they could be, like I don't know. And I'm not saying I think they are for sure. I'm just saying that people tend to look at a piece of evidence and jump too quickly onto one explanation that they're sure is right. And sometimes there's other explanations. And aliens apply to so many parts of our world, like demons. Sound very much like the UAP phenomenon to me, right? A lot of these religious beliefs sound very much like explainable just with different wording by UAP phenomenon. As in, some of these aliens, we seem to be being told that they communicate telepathically. They have energetic ability, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point where I'm suspecting that we're going to be finding out that religion is like humans trying to interpret these phenomenon over millennia in all the human ways we would and telling stories about them. And I'm not saying that God's not real. I'm saying God is real. And that does not diminish God at all. I almost think it makes God more important and more powerful to understand because from my understanding, correct me if you have a different one, it sounds like we're getting a lot of reports that are cross-corroborating that there's more than one thing going on here. It's not all aliens are the same, and it's not. Some of them might be us from the future. Some of them might be us from under the water. Some of them might be other species. It's really hard to pin down like what all these phenomenon are, but they're definitely not just made up.
And I think some of them are ours.
I agree.
I think, I think the cover up is the weird part, though. It's like if you go back to Operation Blue Book. When they started doing that, the sole purpose of Operation Blue Book is to take any credible story and make it look ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they talked about that openly. And then Hynek, when he left Operation Blue Book, became a believer.
Yeah.
And started talking about UFOs being real. That's
Funny how
a
that
fucking
works.
that's a big old red flag right there.
I mean, the UFO community is filled with people like that are, and it's really hard to know who's who. It's
Right.
super hard to know who's
Right.
who. And did you notice how recently, like a month ago sort of, there was this breaking story that set the whole UAP community on fire about this disclosure that I think Jeremy Corbell was coming out and whistleblowing on, if I remember correctly, that they were saying that they're gonna they're gonna trick us by saying that there's a mothership arriving in 3 years.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I
and
did
it's
hear that.
and it becomes this thing where it's like, how do you know? He's saying that he's exposing it, but how do you know if he's exposed? It's just like, it's the ultimate test of, are you skeptical enough and also open-minded enough and
Right.
thoughtful enough?
Also, if there's a believer, get them some bullshit. Feed the believer some bullshit.
Exactly.
And
They don't even
feed-
have to know that they're in on it, right?
They don't have to know. And it could be like kind of plausible bullshit, and it could be corroborated with some other bullshit
Yep.
that you have.
I think that's what most bullshit artists are in most fields. I think it's usually useful idiots, like people like myself, genuinely. Like, I am in some ways one of those people in the sense that if I get fooled by something, I become that.
Right.
Which is why it's so important to think really carefully and to be okay with being wrong, because
Right.
you never know what your sources are.
Yeah.
And that's also why I'm really careful not to do very many like leaks or whistleblows or like, because how do I know who the fuck you are? I don't want to spend all the time to try to vet you and find out where you came from and your
Right.
story came from. I'd way rather just learn. There's so much to learn.
One of the weirdest things about Jacques Vallée's work is that Jacques Vallée has been documenting this stuff again. It's like since I think the 50s or the 60s when he started, but he's also documented historical stories. And the historical stories
You mean like from before modern times?
like 1700s, 1800s, and these stories are the same story. They're the same story when people never heard of them. Not only that, in the 70s, he's documenting this woman that in California found an egg-shaped craft in her yard. Like she tells this story about confronting this being. There's an egg-shaped craft. These fucking egg-shaped crafts, all described by people who don't know that someone else has described this story.
And no one would ever choose an egg shape when they're describing an aircraft.
Right,
ever.
right.
Especially back then.
And
right?
it's also all telepathic communication. It's all like weird moments.
Same stories.
Lapse of time, memories confused. You feel like your brain's been erased, don't know what's going on. You find yourself in a field. How did I get here? There's a lot of weird shit that's like the same story over and over and over again. I've had 3 knee surgeries, had my nose operated on. Oh, let me tell you my game changer. Mouth tape.
You were talking about this.
Game changer. Game changer. I know people say this, and I know it's like one of those fitness influencer things where people are selling something. I got no skin in the game, okay? I'm not selling nothing. I don't have anything for sale. I use a company called Hostage Tape. I'm sure there's other ones that are great, but the Hostage Tape makes me laugh. You take this tape and you put it over your mouth when you sleep. Now, I have sleep apnea, so I wear a mouthpiece. And my mouthpiece has a tongue depressor. So the mouthpiece is fitted to my lower jaw, and the tongue depressor keeps my tongue from falling back on my throat. So I don't block my airway, because I have a big tongue. And I have a fat neck. So it's like the air hole gets clogged up by the tongue. So the tongue depressor works, and then I put the tape over my mouth, so I'm not using my mouth at all. Thank God I got my nose fixed in like 15 years ago or something like that. Best decision I ever made in my life. Best decision I've ever made.
Really?
One of the best.
Is that the one where you had to like pull shit out of your nose?
Yeah. It was. I was on the road with Tommy, and I would show him the boogers, and he would like almost vomit because the boogers were insane. So once you get your nose operated on, like I had probably 12 nose breaks, maybe more, by the time I got my nose operated on. So the inside of it was all calcified, like all the inside, just like cauliflower ear. That was the inside of my nose. Like it was all just clogged. I spoke like my nose was stuffed. This was how my voice was.
Wait, hold on. Is this because I listened to a version of your voice when you were younger?
Yeah.
And it sounds totally different. It
It's
almost
also
sounds
getting
like
older, your voice definitely deeper. So that's me with the.
Wait, that's you?
Yeah, when I got the nose plugs. So that's after the operation. So
oh my God!
that's it
Look
right
how
there.
big your nose is.
Well, it's all swollen.
I
right
know.
there. Anyway, so if you have a deviated septum, I can't recommend it enough. It's such a huge thing to do. It opens up your nose, and you get like 10% more cardio. My jiu-jitsu changed totally. Like my gas in jiu-jitsu was way better. I was like, this is crazy. Why didn't I do this a long
From
time
breathing
ago?
through your nose and not your mouth?
No, because you can breathe through both.
Oh.
So you have more
I got
airs
it.
coming in.
This is how you tell if you have a deviated septum. Put a mirror underneath, or take your phone and do a video, and then breathe through your nose. And if it closes, like mine shuts.
Yeah.
And they showed that to me.
Yeah, you have a deviated septum.
I have a
for sure.
dude. You know what happens to me when I sleep? My
Yeah.
fucking goozle swells up.
Yeah, you were telling me.
It's the fucking worst.
Yeah, we were trying to decide where the tonsils were, and you were explaining the tonsils are actually on the side, and your wife was calling it a goozle.
She's a redneck.
She's this little.
She goes, this goozle got
that
swallowed.
little thing, whatever the word is, the technical
It's a
word.
uvula. It's uvulitis.
So I put the mouthpiece in, and then I
get
tape
no
up my mouth.
no uvulitis if I have mouth tape in.
Yeah, so this is the thing. I don't snore at all anymore. Zero snoring. Like I'm silent. when I sleep.
No sleep mask. Apnea
No,
mask.
no. I don't have anything.
don't believe
No. But I woke up the first day I did it, I was like, holy shit. I feel so much better. Like instantaneously noticed a difference. Like I was like 30% more rested. Something like that. Like I felt just like a significant number where I could like feel it. I was like, whoa.
This theme of transitions and developing frames where other people don't have them, like it's so interesting how it's manifested in every art.
In everything.
Like I remember when I was playing chess, because I was a chess player from age 6 to 23. That was my first art.
Well, you
And-
weren't just a chess player. You were a chess player they made a movie about, dude.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I gotta
that
say
didn't have much
dude.
to do with me, man.
Well,
they did that.
Searching for Bobby Fischer is about you, bro.
Yeah.
You know, which has got to be weird.
Many moons ago. That was fucking weird.
Was it weird, the dramatic representation of your life versus the real life? Like, what is that juxtaposition like? Is it bizarre watching a fake version of you on television or on a screen rather? And did you have like a feeling like, am I that person? I'm not that person. Like, I'm me. This is not really me, but it's about me.
Yeah. So the book came out when I was 11 years old. My dad actually wrote the book. He was a writer, and he ended up just writing about the journey from me starting to play chess to winning my first national championship. And when the book came out, it felt like I read it, and it felt true. I was a little pissed off. I didn't want people to know when I cried. I was an 11-year-old. I didn't want to be vulnerable, right? But like that felt like, and that was my first real thrust into like some degree of spotlight. And I was the national champion at that point, and I was each year for those years. So like I was at the top of the chess world, the youth chess world, and then I had the movie come out, the book came out. And then when the movie came out, it was a shit show. I hated the movie when it first came out.
Why'd you hate it?
Because I thought it had nothing to do with my life. Years later, I was able to see it as a work of art separate from my life and see it that way. And I was able to see how it was thematically true in many ways to themes in my life. But like my first teacher, Bruce Pandolfini, who's still a very dear friend of mine, Ben Kingsley played him as this mean guy. And,
Right.
And I've had terrible coaches in my life. I've had coaches who were super destructive. But Bruce wasn't. He was beautiful and loving and helped me discover my love for chess. My first coaches were the Hustlers in Washington Square Park and Bruce Pandolfini together. And the way that was represented, I didn't like it. They also combined a bunch of characters in Washington Square Park, the Hustlers, they combined them into one in a way that, you know, was thematically true, but didn't feel, so like when you're a kid, you're a teenager, you see all the different, the movie comes out about your life, you see all the differences as opposed to similarities. And it was, yeah, and I felt really guilty about it relative to Bruce. That was a big part of it, because I love Bruce.
Did you talk to him about it?
Oh, yeah.
What was his take on it? I mean, was he named Bruce in the movie?
Yeah, he was named Bruce in the movie, and he honestly, he loved it. I mean, it put him in the spotlight as like the chess teacher in the country, in the world. So he rolled with it really well. I was just sensitive to all these mean-spirited things that happened between us in the film that never happened in life.
Right.
And years later, like those things did happen to me. And actually, during those years, when it came out, they were happening to me then. What was interesting is I had some really destructive coaches during that time. And I didn't put that on Bruce. But also what happened with the movie is that I loved chess so deeply. It was my first form of self-expression. And up until the film came out, it was this sort of this pre-conscious, innocent form of play, of battle, like it was my jiu-jitsu mats. I fucking loved it. And then the movie is what pulled me into self-consciousness for the first time. I started thinking about, instead of losing myself in thought, I started thinking about how I looked to groupies, to cameras, to presence. So like I moved from self-expression to self-consciousness to being locked up. And then, you know, and I didn't ask for it. I didn't decide I want to have a movie. This thing was done. And it was ultimately, I mean, I'm grateful for it. From my perspective now, the existential crisis that happened was awesome for me. It forced me to become more complicated as a human and integrate a sense of consciousness into my relationship to something. So my perspective on it now is that it was a beautiful journey. It made me grapple with a lot of shit. I didn't become reliant on a flower garden in order to have a deep relationship to an art. But at the time, I was very conflicted about it. And then when I graduated high school, I took off and left the U.S. for a couple of years, lived in Slovenia with my girlfriend at the time, to get away from the spotlight, get away from the media, get away from all the shit that was connected to the movie. And that was when I started studying East Asian philosophy and meditating and started reading Jack Kerouac and existentialist literature and trying to figure myself out, figure the world out, figure out how I related to these things in some empty space.
What's a tremendous burden to place upon a young person to take their life, which is essentially anonymous, you know, to the general public, you know, known in the chess world, obviously, but in the general public, anonymous, and then all of a sudden, a movie star. And not a movie star in the sense that you're on the screen, but it's about you, which is probably even weirder. So you have these false expectations or false false narratives of how your life played out and who the people and who the pieces. And so everywhere you run into people, they have a version of you that they've seen that's not real,
And they think they know you very intimately.
which is weird.
But they don't. Same, I mean, with you, you're so public, right? Most people think they know who you are and what
But at
you
least
think.
they know me from me talking.
Yeah, that's a really
They
good
don't know me. Imagine if like Mario Lopez played me in a movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's someone less handsome than Mario Lopez. But and then you would have this thing where like, oh, you're the guy that guy played in the movie, and I'd be like, yeah, but that's not really. That's not really me. I didn't have that problem. This is not real. That's
Right.
fake.
And also, when you're a teenager, you're susceptible to all of the temptations.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, so we've got groupies everywhere, and that's awesome. It's a lot of fun, but it's not necessarily consistent with sitting for 6 hours at a time in competition playing chess.
No,
With,
it's probably
like,
destructive to it, right?
Quite destructive. Yeah, which is interesting, and you have to integrate all of that.
How old were you when the film came out?
15.
Yeah, that is a crazy time to get any kind of attention, because you're just getting testosterone for the first time. You're like, what is all this, right?
Yeah.
And your body's growing.
And it
you're
was
becoming-
flowing hard.
Yeah, and you're becoming a man. Now all of a sudden girls like you. Like what? What is this about? This is craziness.
I already had a very strange life because, and I think like a foundational part of my psychology came from. So I started playing chess when I was 6 years old. By the time I was 7, I was the top-rated player for my age in the country. My first national championship, I got my ass kicked, which was tremendous. It was great. Last round, I lost. That last round of my first nationals, I lost to the guy who later became my best friend for many, many years, David Arnett.
And you say tremendous because was that like a jumping point for improvement for you?
Because I didn't learn that I could win without getting my ass kicked first. I had to grapple with my demons, and the year from then to winning my first nationals the next year was when I really developed a love for chess, and I had to work very hard, and I didn't associate winning the nationals with talent or a smooth trip or all the bullshit that people can connect when they're called a prodigy from the outside. It's not a term I ever related to myself at all, but like, I mean, these labels are put on from the outside, and if you win too fast, too young, you can just develop this brittle relationship to success and to work and to training and to everything, right? You don't realize that getting your ass kicked is a huge part of the journey.
That's a problem with very talented fighters as well. A lot of very talented martial artists, they never develop the discipline to truly become great, because like from the very beginning they had, and whatever the advantage was, whether it's a speed advantage, a strength advantage. I mean, genetics plays such a large part in martial arts success. You know, if you have someone who's an elite mind, who is incredibly disciplined and also has great genetics, you get a Mike Tyson.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You have that combination.
Yeah,
That's what you're looking for.
that's what you're looking for. But if you don't have that, and Mike Tyson is competing in your division, you're fucked. Like you can be really disciplined, but like so genetics do they do play a factor. Circumstances, coaching, there's a lot of different factors. But if you're a real prodigy, and there are people out there that are just extraordinary from the beginning, I find that if success comes too quickly, you don't develop the mettle to really push through boundaries and reach new levels. Because the only way you get there is through, you have to, I think oftentimes training becomes regimented, becomes something you do. You see incremental growth and improvement, you get confidence, but then when you compete, if you get your ass kicked, then you have to kind of reassess everything. Like, okay, was I working at 10 or was I working at 8? Was I studying tape or was I fucking off and calling girls? You know, was I paying attention to my training routine and my recovery, or was I just training and partying? Like, what was I doing wrong? Like, what led this person to land those shots? What led this person to beat me?
Yeah.
And if you don't have those moments where you lose, I don't think you ever really achieve your true potential, because you have to be challenged. And the best expression of challenge is total humiliating defeat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so consistently, the biggest losses, the most crushing losses, are what lead to the biggest wins later.
Yes.
Sometimes many years later, but it like that. And people often, I remember I was giving a simultaneous chess exhibition for a charity when in my 20s somewhere, and this guy introduced his son, and he said his son hadn't lost a chess game in 2 years, and he was so proud. And it's just like I knew it was a fucking train wreck. I mean, the kid obviously just was only choosing people to play who he could beat. Wouldn't compete up in tournaments. Would only play down. And he was the only kid who didn't want to play against me in the simul. And so his life was protecting this perfect thing, right? People who don't lose. So in my chess life, the interesting thing that happened in my psychology is that I was the top-rated player for my age in the country from a young age, but I always played up. I always played against adults, except for nationals and worlds. I played up, and all of my rivals were targeting me because I was the top seed in youth events. But their coaches and were much stronger players than me. They were adult international masters, grandmasters, and they could see all my weaknesses, psychological, technical, everything. And so if I ever made a mistake, the weakness was exploited until I took it on. And so I developed from a really young age this relationship to training, which was if I didn't take on my weakness, I got my ass kicked and I felt pain. And so not taking on my weakness became outside of my conceptual scheme. So from age 8, and it can be a blind spot like today in life. Like a criticism of me that certain loved ones would have is that I love training. I love pushing my limits as a way of life in whatever I'm doing. If it was chess, if it was fighting. Now it's foiling, surfing and then foiling in the biggest waves I can find. And like just if I'm playing at my edge, I feel it feels beautiful. It feels like where I want to be. But the comfort zone doesn't feel beautiful. And to me that works really well. But it's a big part of like my foundation in that was when being 8 years old and being targeted 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, my whole life. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that it was actually outside of my conceptual scheme not to take on. Because it was just connected to pain from such a young age as a competitor. And there's no luck in chess. There's no fucking luck in chess. If you have, like, if you're playing chess, if you have an opening repertoire that's massive, and you go into a game and there's one little place that there's a weakness and you don't want your opponent to go, he always fucking finds it. You don't know why. You never like make a move and hope he doesn't see it, or let's set this trap and it's not the best move, but maybe he'll fall into it. No, that never works at a high level. So you have to take your shit on.
So you associate not taking it on with pain.
Yeah, I don't anymore. I did young, and now I don't associate it with anything. I just don't do it.
Right. Yeah.
Unless I try.
That's a better way to handle it. To recognize there's a real process. There's the right way to do this. It's the only way to do this. So don't even think about the other way.
Right. But if it's kind of driving you, for me, I think it's healthier for me to recognize that pattern in myself and then roll with it, as opposed to just not even see, like, that it's there.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Acknowledge. Well, you have to have acknowledgement of it because you have memories.
Like if I'm cooking a turkey, I have to cook a world-class turkey. I have a friend, Jim Detmer, who says to me, Josh, what you have to do is cook a terrible turkey. Just cook an average turkey. You know, don't crush it. In other words, like don't. It's an interesting thing when you become present to the fact that you have this like youthful story running through everything you do. You can choose to live that way, but it's good for it to be a choice as opposed to just driving you.
It's definitely good for it to be a choice. It's always good for it to be a choice because sometimes life will, there's a curve that you have to take and you have to put something aside for a bit or maybe forever. And you have to be able to transition to something else. And if you can't do that, then you'll be stuck.
We have 5 non-speaking members of our production team, which is awesome.
Oh, wow.
So cool. Like 2 are specializing in like working on graphics and depicting what things that they talk about look like the chat on the hill. I don't know if you've heard of this telepathic chat room where non-speakers hang out. Okay, we can come back to that. And like the realms where maybe they get information. So, or just even what it means to see auras or to see stuff like that. So we have 2 graphics advisors that will be working with the graphics house on that stuff. We have a scientific advisor who's going to help us figure out how to best do the telepathy tapes with the scientists that we'll be working with, and then 2 story kind of consultants. So it's really cool to, for all 5 of these individuals, I believe it's the first paying job they've ever had. So it's just cool having them on our team.
Cool. So what is this chat on the hill?
Okay, so that was one of the harder things to wrap my head around. When I first met Katie in Houston, Katie said, Houston talks about this telepathic chat room where he can go hang out with his friends. He can kind of tune into this telepathic chat room and And he teaches there too, and it's a place where they can commune and talk and encourage you.
He teaches in the telepathic chat room?
Yeah, Houston's like really special. He really is, and I think there are different roles that this person might talk about plant energy, and this person might talk about this, and I've heard this now from, well, let's just back up. So
how many people are in this telepathic chat room?
Well, I don't know, but well, I'll get to that answer. Let me just, because I think that's an interesting thing. So Houston started talking about this, what he calls the Talk on the Hill, which is this telepathic chat room. And then I met his good friend, John Paul, who's also kind of based in Atlanta. And John Paul would go up to his room and put 4 pillows on his head. And his mom was like, he's on the hill. And this is what he does to kind of get everything out, all the sounds of the house, so he can really concentrate and get there. And, she said he really has developed a beautiful relationship with his girlfriend on the hill, and I'm like, what on earth? So I didn't know what to make of it. Only I knew that it felt very real to these parents and these individuals, and people were talking about it in Atlanta. So I thought, okay, this might be an Atlanta thing, that these individuals are doing this. They don't have to be in the same room, the same zip code, that they can connect. And on the day I met John Paul, he was on the hill at one point, and I asked that question. I said, well, how many people are on the hill right now? And I think he wrote 4,000 something. And I was like, holy cow, it seems like a lot. And he's like, well, people are really excited about the documentary right now. So everyone's tuning in to find out what's happening with this. So I was like, whoa. And then I just buried that in my heart as, okay, this is something that is real in Atlanta. And then I was talking to the next big, whoa. Again, telepathy tapes was not out yet. I met a minister in Arizona who had the largest youth, special needs youth ministry or something. And I was on Zoom with him because he was found out about the telepathy and found out about these gifts. And there was a person in his congregation who could predict the future and see things happening in other spaces in the world. And he was just, I think we were connecting to be like, okay, yeah, you've seen this? Okay, let's talk about this. And he was kind of going through his list of what he's witnessed with the individuals in his ministry. And one of the things he said to me was, I was on Zoom the other day with another young individual, or another individual from Minnesota, getting these two to connect, and they started talking about something called the Hill. They go to this place called the Hill. Have you ever heard about this? And I almost fell out of my chair. And then maybe a few months after that, I was talking to a teacher, and she goes, some of my students, have you ever heard about this? They talk about going to some place called the Hill. And one of them says he goes there to learn about time travel, and the other one likes to talk about someone from Norway who talks about the bees and beekeeping and bee stuff. And at that point, my head is exploding, just wait, it's real? Geez, And then there's a father in Israel who I have talked to a lot about this over the years, and he's kept really good track too of how telepathy's been buried in the spelling community and in the education community and what's been going on and how teachers are being fired. So he's fascinating. But one of the things he told me, he's like, oh yeah, we have a separate hill in Israel where a lot of the Orthodox Jewish folks go, and they have their own hill. And then I would get some emails and be like, there's also a hill in Arizona and Florida. There's different hills. So it's a mystery. It's a magical mystery. But
they all call it the same thing?
Yeah, and I don't. And then I've also met after the telepathy tapes came out, one family wrote me and said, hey, my son has said he has telepathy, no doubt there, but he can only do it with people in the room, but he's never been to the hill. How does he get to the hill? And I thought, I don't know, I guess ask another non-speaker who maybe can teach you how to dial into the right frequency. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but it's really, it's awesome,
Now, is there one hill or is there many hills?
I think there's a few hills.
And have they verified that people who are communicating in this hill are actually communicating with these individuals?
Yeah, and in fact, that's one of the storylines in the film that I'm really excited about. One of the subjects is a young girl who's always felt pretty isolated. It's hard sometimes to make friends if you're not able to communicate at school or whatever. So, but she was bringing up names and has brought up names that her mom was like, or they're not in her school, they're not in our periphery, they're not in any of our social stuff. And then once the telepathy tapes came out, these Facebook groups sprang up of families that were kind of going through this stuff. And in that process, she found, I think, like 4 of these individuals that her daughter was saying she was really good friends with on the Hill.
And they also say they go to the Hill.
Yeah. And so we've like corroborated all these points in this girl's life.
Have you tried to corroborate actual distribution of information, actual communication?
Yeah.
Have you done that?
Yeah. It's,
Whoa.
yeah, I mean, that's, of course, like, you have to imagine, for everyone in this world, all the families that I'm close to, and teachers and therapists and stuff, it's still remarkable. So anytime someone says something, we will try to validate it. Like, this person just said they saw this person on the Hill. Can you validate they were there? And then, oh my gosh, yes. What did they talk about? This was said and this was said. Hey, this person says that person is on the Hill and talking about blank. Oh yeah, I can verify that that person teaches about that on the Hill. So, like, it's not like anyone is taking any of this just in stride. Like, well, I think there's still that human nature, like you're talking about, that like even the parents and teachers and me and the people on the front lines of this are still always trying to validate it. Like, this happened. Was that true? Did you get that same thing? And then there's that moment of like, oh my God, like that's happening with all of us all the time too. That mind-blowing, wow, that just, bore out. It's remarkable when it happens.
The Hill thing is next level.
It's next level.
And why is it the Hill? Why do they call it the Hill universally?
Well, Houston named it the Chat on the Hill.
He named it.
Yeah.
How do the other kids name it?
I think
they're all saying it as well, though, right? They're all saying the same term.
Yeah, but I mean, just like someone named this cup, and we're all calling it cup, right? I think like it just spreads.
So you think that child, Houston, he named it, and then everybody else accepted that name?
Yeah.
There was no, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any correlation of that. And the creatures that are described in Socorro, in New Mexico, and in Valençon in France, so those are 3 cases that I've been very involved in from the beginning, from day one, involve creatures that are about, 3 feet tall, that breathe our air,
Hairless?
recognize our signals, communicate with us in funny ways, even mentally. I mean, the witnesses describe getting images in their minds and so on, in all 3 cases. And what's interesting is, people can argue about Trinity all they want, like they argue about Roswell, but the case in Socorro and the case in France, in Valençon, were investigated by governments, not by, the local UFO group, although the local UFO group did a good job in all those cases. But they were, in Socorro, it was first the local police, local policemen saw the craft and the beings and described what happened. He was terrified, when the thing took off. He thought it was something to do with some new gadget or some work in the desert. It's an area that's still in the same state today. I've gone back there with Dr. Hynek's son, with Paul Hynek a few months ago. I've gone several times there. And so after the police, turned out the FBI was in town on another case. They had no jurisdiction in New Mexico for that particular case. It wasn't a federal case, but they helped preserve the traces, the FBI way. And the local police was happy to have them there. And then there was the state police came in and did an investigation, and then people from the base, came in with experts in explosives, experts in recovery of weapons and rockets and so on, because they thought it might be something that had come from, from the Trinity range that was out of its way and had crashed near Socorro, in which case they might have responsibility, including financial responsibility, if something was destroyed or whatever. So this was very serious. I have the whole file. Okay, it's a big file. Nobody's looking at it. I mean, the investigation in Washington now, they are saying, we're going to look at the cases of the last 12 months. Well, what kind of science is that? Can you imagine scientists reading this? And this is the way they are going to solve the UFO problem by looking at vague pictures of lights in the sky for 1 year. You know, why don't they go back to those records? Those are federal records. Okay? The case in Valençol, 5 agencies of the French government. So this guy was a farmer. He had a field where he was growing plants to make perfume. So this was high level, expensive crop. This wasn't just, alfalfa or something. And he goes there at 5 o'clock in the morning because, he wants to do to water the thing and so on before the sun is up, because it's going to be in the south of France, it's going to be very hot. You can't work in the field during the early afternoon. So he wants to be done with that. He sees this contraption, in the middle of the field, crushing the plants. And so he sneaks in, and he's paralyzed. Okay? Now, there is an egg-shaped object, just like the one, at Trinity, just like the one in Socorro. It's the size of a mid-sized truck. There are 2 creatures in front of it, human, human-looking, 2 eyes, breathing air. They look at him, sort of amused, and one of them has something on his belt, takes out, pointed at him, and that's when he's paralyzed. Now, he's not, as you know, I'm not a doctor, but I've gone to doctors about what kind of paralysis is that, where you can stand up and watch something, you just can't move. They said, well, there is a type of paralysis that will just inhibit the motor, the motor nerves, where but you'll still be up and aware. You're not going to fall down, in a heap. And from there, he sees them going back inside the thing. The thing takes off. It takes off like a shot out of a gun, and it vanishes in midair. Now, he goes to see the gendarmes. This man is fairly wealthy. He owns quite a bit of, several fields, expensive crops. His wife is the mayor of the town. The gendarmes are going to be very careful with him because he's also from the resistance in World War II. When he was young, he joined the resistance, and the resistance in that part of France fought in the Alps against the Germans. And, they were regarded as heroes of World War II. And so the gendarmes are very careful with him. There are some things he's not going to tell the gendarmes because he thinks, and I went there, he didn't want to talk to anybody from Paris, he didn't want to be on TV, he wanted to concentrate on his experience because he thought there was going to be something else. And he was aware of some of his buddies. Now, this is a part of France where people talk, but they have secrets too. I mean, historically, there are things like that in the U.S., parts where people are not going to talk to strangers.
Right.
The only reason I could go there was that I went there with a lady who was from Paris, with the government. She was with de Gaulle's government. She had the rank of ambassador, and she had a vacation home there. So we went there for 3 days, and she knew everybody there. And he told us what he thought might happen again. And he didn't want the gendarmes mixed in with what he was doing.
Why did he think that something was going to happen again?
They evidently, and he swore to secrecy about what it was, but evidently there was communication with the beings when he was there.
And
now,
so these beings, just tiny, look like people. Did they have different features than us? Or was it just human
They are
features?
just like the ones at Trinity and like the ones at Socorro. So in that book you have actually 2, 2, and 3, you have 7 creatures that are humanoid, that breathe our air, that seem to understand us. You know, the visual, there's visual contact. Well, we can have visual contact with animals. I mean, that doesn't mean they are human or meta-human, but there is messages that come through all of that, that the witnesses are reluctant to talk about in all 3 cases. So in Socorro, finally, the Air Force went there. They threw the Air Force out because the Air Force said, well, that's just a gadget, from the base, and that was stupid. So they finally sent Dr. Hynek there, and Dr. Hynek asked me to organize the files that were coming. I was at Northwestern at the time, working. I had done my PhD already, and I was on the staff of the computing center, and we had a small team trying to help, trying to help Hynek keep the files together. So we were, in communication with him the whole time, and then I put the files together, and I have the file. This is the official file.
So these people were reluctant to talk about what these creatures were communicating with them. But did they talk about it at all?
It was very personal.
Very personal.
Yeah. There had been a communication that transcended their life. There was something else, something outside. So you could almost call it a sort of a religious feeling, but it wasn't. It wasn't about divinity or God specifically, but it was about this, the other side of life, a bigger meaning for life. That's their interpretation. It may not be. There may be other things that they are trying to communicate.
But it was very profound.
Yes. But
all 3 cases had similar stories in that regard.
And in all 3 cases, there are traces that were measured. There is technology of sort. And in the case of Socorro, people came up with all kinds of ideas that maybe it was a balloon, a special balloon, right? There were only 12 of them in the world and so on. Well, in the book, people haven't noticed it, but in the book, I was able to solve that problem because I found a transcript of a conversation with a man who was head of a motor pool at the on the Army range at White Sands. And he had given his team some instructions on, how to make sure that the motor pool was working really well, because White Sands is so big. When people went home, they could get lost, at White Sands. And then how are you going to find them? I mean, there are tracks, but there is no paved road at the time. How are you going to, find them? So you can launch a helicopter the next day looking for, a lost car somewhere with a family in it. But so he made rules that they had to call periodically to report where they were when they went home, 50 miles away across the desert. So they could find them if there was something wrong with the car. He's driving home with his family. This is after the Socorro thing is done. They are all interrogating Lonnie Zamora, the cop who was driving that thing. And he sees a light over the mountains in the southwest towards Mexico. But it's still, it's still in New Mexico, but it's in that direction. A light that's not a star, it's really bright. And the light gets brighter and brighter, and his car dies. Now he's head of a motor pool for the base. Everybody reports to him, and they have all the, all the army cars and the trucks and everything else, the half-tracks. So he looks at that thing, he tries to call his team, the radio doesn't work. The radio should work, the radio doesn't work. And the thing gets very bright, and then it recedes, it goes away the way it apparently came in. We don't know if it came in or if it just got bright. Okay, the car starts. He goes home, and then the next day he goes to his shop. He gets his staff together. He says, "You guys are going to take this car apart. I want to see every screw and every piece of it and every level and everything and the seats and so on. I want to see all of that on the floor. And you're going to test it, and you're going to tell me what's changed or if anything, how that car stopped in the middle of the desert." And they couldn't find anything. And that report was an official report, okay, that was never published. And it nails the whole thing, that this was not a balloon. This was not an hallucination. The patrolman wasn't drunk like they accused him of, or making up a story. And
So we were just singing Jon Stewart's praises before this started, but I'm so happy he's back at The Daily Show, and I'm so happy he makes fun of everything, and I'm so happy he still makes dick jokes.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's like The Daily Show seems like The Daily Show again. Like, that guy's a very unique dude, very unique person, and one of the most important, pieces to, unify everybody. He's reasonable. Mm-hmm. Like, he gets the whole big picture. Like, let's stop being so fucking ridiculously tribal.
In the morning meeting, he'll come in, and we're all sitting there, the writers, and he just kind of shuts the door behind him, and we start talking. But it's like a conversation with a college professor, but he's in charge, and it's beautiful. All sides. This, I disagree with that. What about this? And it's like, oh wow, it's really fun to be part of. And then someone will yell out a dick joke, and then that joke will make it to the show too. It's like smart things and dumb things. That's beautiful.
Well, he's never abandoned being a real comic.
Correct.
Which is what got him to the dance in the first place. So he's always has those instincts, and he's the very best at holding a line and making something even more preposterous just with a facial expression.
Correct. Yeah.
And pointing out these fucking unbelievably ridiculous in-your-face hypocrisies that you see every day from both sides.
Yeah, from both sides. Have you ever done stand-up with him?
Oh yeah, we've done stuff together, back in the day. Yeah, I can't remember the last time. I was supposed to do something with him at one of Dave's things that he was doing outside back in the day, but I never wound up doing it. But I definitely did stand up with him in the clubs back in New York, and I knew him way, way back in the day. He was on MTV.
Yeah, I remember that, and I think I remember one of his books was called Naked Pictures of Famous People, which was great.
He's a solid guy. He's a solid guy. I don't always agree with him, but I don't always agree with everybody. I don't even agree with me.
Isn't that good? I mean, isn't that the point of this? It's like you want a couple people to be mad sometimes.
I also think we all, as human beings, need to be divorced from our ideas.
Okay.
Your ideas are not you. You are you. And ideas are things that you should consider.
Right.
Ideas are something that you should, if it's going to have some sort of a real physical impact on your life and your family and your family's life, the people you care about, I understand. I understand why you get connected to things like that.
Right.
But for the most part, most of these ideas don't affect you. A lot of them don't. And yet we're so ideologically captured that we fight for these ideas as if it's our very nature.
Right.
You're talking about your essence as a human being. And it's stupid.
This reminds me of a time I left my joke book on a train in New York. And in the joke book I have, this book is important to me, call me if you get this, And this guy texts me and he says, I have this joke book. And talk about your ideas.
Yeah.
The joke book is the most unfiltered, dumb idea ever.
Oh, yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'm sure he's reading it. Why, you're going to read it. You're going to read a stranger's joke book. And I connected with him. He was very kind. He gave it to me, but he kind of looked at me like, are you a comedian type thing? And I said, yeah, but it's terrifying when that idea gets attached to you when it was just a fleeting idea.
Yeah. We love telling people what we believe.
And it's very important that we feel like we have beliefs, and it's when we start sharing them that
Well, you find out other people don't agree.
You find out other people might not agree with you. And this gets back to grit and toughness and...
well, this also goes back to the importance of your show, The Daily Show. Because The Daily Show, especially under the tutelage of Jon Stewart, when he's running the helm, it's so balanced at pointing out ridiculous shit all over the place, which I think is so important.
That's the goal. That's the aim.
So smart.
And when we do it right, I love it. And it is every day. So sometimes you do it right, and you're thankful. You pat yourself on the back. But guess what? There's a show tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think we benefit. Man, so many. When I host, so many questions. I'll take questions from the audience, and so many people go like, Michael, how do you hold yourself to journalistic integrity when you? And I go, what? I'm a fucking comedian. This is on Comedy Central. I'm not a journalist. The fact that just because you see us as informative, which I'm thankful for, and the fact that you come to us for information, which I'm thankful for, but
it's a little terrifying though, right?
Don't ever forget, lady, I'm not a journalist.
Yeah.
I'm not in, the war zone. I'm a clown.
Yes.
My job is to put all this shit into a comedy machine and crank out some type of sausage and feed it to you. But it's nuts that
Comedy Central, Daily Show is considered journalism.
Yeah, or people will stop me on the subway and go like, thank you for what you're doing. And I'm going, I'm trying to just make you laugh. Is that what you mean? It's not what they mean, though. They mean like...
Fighting the good fight.
Fighting the fight, decompressing the...
Fascists.
You're right. And also, comedy, as we've talked about, is one of the only places that can challenge and speak to power, truthfully.
Yeah, and comedy also can make you consider something. So, like, if you have an opinion and you go out there and state your opinion eloquently, I could be there, well, I disagree. I have a different opinion.
Yep.
But if you go out there with that opinion, you make me laugh with something I don't even necessarily agree with.
Dude, that's the best.
And then you go, oh, he's got a fucking point. He's got a fucking point.
That is the magic trick.
Yes,
That's the magic trick of comedy, and and the Daily Show does that great. But I remember one time sitting with my wife at the Comedy Store. Tiger Woods had just all of that shit came out. The cheating, the voicemails. I mean, he was like, maybe arguably one of the more promiscuous husbands of all time. And Burr goes up and he starts defending Tiger, right? And I'm feeling my wife's energy. I'm like, Bill, don't do this, dude. Now, you're defending this guy who is in the heat of all the hatred. And as I watch the joke, I feel her relax. Now at the end, she's laughing. And I'm like, you just did the fucking magic trick.
Yeah.
You did the trick.
He's one of the best at it.
You took the level of difficulty at its highest.
Yeah.
All of us were against you. You did it. And that's the shit. That's as close to magic as there is.
Yeah.